Well, there's some boys that's what they want to do. Like one of the first questions they'll ask me, oh, so when do we spar? I was like, when you get good enough.
Yeah.
First of all,
when
you
I think
suck
you're not a threat for being terrible,
right?
Because you are right
well,
now. No
and
offense.
that's probably the least of it. And I explain to them, the big thing is I want to get to know you. I want to make sure you're a cool person and your ego's in check before you get punched in the face. Because in this sport, everybody gets punched in the face. Mike Tyson gets punched in the face thousands of times.
It's literally the best part about the sport is that that even if I don't punch this guy in the face, he's going to run into somebody that will. Yeah.
We're always collaborating at all times with the universe.
So Bruce Lombard, man, you've been in this area for quite a while, and I know that you've been instructing out of the area for at least 20 years, right? And I mean, you've got to be coming up on like, is it more or less? I feel like it's been more.
Yeah, I moved here in State College in 1994.
Okay.
And I just leaving where I was at. My sister was here going to school at Penn State, so I came and shacked up with her just to get away from where I was, and then I joined State College Martial Arts Academy.
Oh, yeah, it's so weird, crazy to think about. That building's been gone for so long at this point.
So that's the it was that old YMCA that now where I'm not sure about that high rise called, where Orange Theory is.
The Met.
The Met. Okay. So I joined that gym in 1994 and was a student there until 2001. And the owner and head instructor there, Bill Gephardt, he died at a young age.
Yeah, I was in high school. I remember when this happened. Yeah.
So, big, strong guy. You think healthy as heck. But
right.
He had a history in his family of, I believe his dad died of esophageal cancer.
Oh.
And he didn't smoke anything like that. Just
wow, that's great. Well, genetically, it might have passed, right?
Yeah. And I think, from what I understand, most men in their late 20s, early 30s, it's the acid reflux, the heartburn.
Yeah.
And people just don't take care of it because they just pop a Prodosec or whatever.
Tums or whatever it is.
That's what he would eat, Tums like crazy.
Yeah, like that's his candy.
Yeah. So, and whatever, developed cancer, and then before he really knew it, it was kind of all over his body. And so he was 38.
So young in the game, though.
And
that's
again,
crazy.
you looked at him and it's like, damn.
Yeah.
He's like a statue of what health and fitness should be. And so when he died, that was 2001. And
did the gym change names then?
Yes. So his general manager, Paul Zelinka, who's the general manager since he opened that gym, State College Martial Arts Academy. So he was just general manager when Bill died. Then Paul took over ownership. We changed the name to Titan Fitness.
Titan, that's right. Yep. I couldn't think of the name of it. Titan Fitness. That's right.
And then I came in as the head coach. So I did all the coaching of the classes, and then he he operated the gym and owned it. And then he was there. We were together all the way till 2017, and that's when he moved on from ownership, and then I took over, and that's when it became Lombard MMA.
And then, did you come up underneath, like from the State College Martial Arts Academy? Was that like where you started training, or it was like, did you train before you moved up this way?
I trained a little bit back home, but it was in like Taekwondo.
That's like the thing that's available in every strip mall.
Especially, and I'm from a small town. If you think of it locally, Phillipsburg size, maybe.
Gotcha.
So we didn't have much options.
Right.
So it just, my girlfriend's guy, friend of the family, older guy, he knew some Taekwondo, black belt, or whatever you want to call it. But so I played around with that for a little bit. But then I moved down. So that was maybe in 1992 or something.
Okay.
And then I moved down here, and right away, first week I moved in down here, I got a job at Nittany Beverage. and located a martial arts gym, and thankfully it was that one.
Yeah.
And I always remember walking to that gym, and Bill had long hair, total biker looking guy. Paul, same way. I walk in there, Paul had a wad of chew in his mouth. They're listening to Pantera, and I'm like, because you think of martial arts, more traditional, like,
shoes off before the mat, bow before you enter.
And there's no chew in his mouth, spit cup, and Pantera plan. And I was like, damn, what is this all about? And then I walked in.
We're going to learn to wrestle.
Yes.
Okay, all right.
And I walked in for my free class because they offered a free class first. And then Bill walks in, and he's 6'1", 220, long hair. And I'm like, this is just messed up, man. But part of me was like, this is great.
Right. Yeah. There's probably something real good to be learning here. Real practical.
It was, man. That was an amazing gym. Bill Gephardt is a great coach, great person.
Well, they did boxing and
everything.
JKD. And
so JKD was the art that I started in.
Okay.
And then the boxing, of course, involved Muay Thai, kickboxing.
Was the JKD kind of based in like Wing Chun, or is that like
everything? Yeah. So we did the JKD, the boxing, Muay Thai were all part of JKD. Okay. So and that's Bruce Lee, that was part of the Jeet Kune Do. Was Jeet Kune Do is the original mixed martial arts in my opinion. He took a bunch of different arts and sports and put them together, and that was his Jeet Kune Do or his mixed martial arts.
Super controversial, right? Because everybody was coming from right. I mean, most of the time, if you're, I don't know if this is necessarily true of all people that that train or choose to train, but like for a lot of people, lineage is really important.
Yes.
Like you want to be able to trace like where this goes to, where it comes from. And
that kind of once the UFC in the 2000s got popular, all that traditional and
kind of went by the wayside.
Crap. Yeah, just make me a fighter.
Right.
The respect and all that kind of. And so it was hard for, I guess you could say, old school martial arts instructors because that etiquette of martial arts, how it's always been, kind of went out the window a little bit.
It did for a while, certainly. I feel like there's a period where I think nobody really knew how to treat what we were doing because it didn't feel like that you go and you bow before you enter the ring anymore. And you've got, Pride and K1 and, UFC in its infancy. You got those fights,
And you got UFC fighters and the most polarizing and popular and visually famous fighters in the world talking shit.
Right. It's just like a half step down from like pro wrestling, basically, when it comes to the shit talk.
So all that respect and courtesy, maybe outside they show that respect, but yes sir, no sir, all that kind of stuff. Joey St. Pierre kind of carried that for a little bit, but now it's gone.
Yeah, I feel like the etiquette has shifted more towards just sort of like whatever that postmodern of it's going to be. It's sort of like depending on, it's hard, right? I want to say it's still there, but it's hard because you also have to sell tickets, right? So you've got Conor McGregor's out there that are there to sell tickets to the event, especially if it's a pay-per-view. Especially if it's a UFC contract.
All part of the game.
I trained there for a little while at Lionheart whenever it had shifted over and they'd done that first big remodel where they finally had like some floor mat space to be able to do stuff. And I think they had an octagon in there at the time whenever they first did. That was like the big feature that
that's when the guy that started that, he was an ex-Penn State wrestler, and his motive was Phil Davis had just graduated.
I held pads for Phil Davis that first year after he graduated.
He wanted, to build this gym in State College where all these fighters come from all over the place, and then certainly Penn State wrestlers once they're done, if they want to take that path, and he'd kind of be their agent almost.
Right.
But it just good idea. I mean, the guy that did it, give him credit, but a lot of these high level coaches that live in Florida, California, Brazil, or New York City, they don't want to come to State College.
Right.
There's just nothing.
This isn't the place to host camp, right?
No. So they did it for about a year or something, and I mean, John Jones trained down there.
Yep.
Dominic Cruz did.
Yep. I remember seeing their fights, their first like UFC fights, and being like, "This is wild."
So that good effort didn't really last too long. A couple years, I think, and then things shifted, and that's when 2008. That's when Paul and I moved over from. Where our place was there at the Met on the corner of After and College.
Or was it? It was still the Martial Arts Academy at that point.
No, the Martial Arts Academy ended in 2001.
Okay, yeah. So then, then it was
2000, same year, 2002 actually. Beginning is when it shifted over to Titan.
Yeah,
and then in 2008, I believe, is when we went. So the Lionheart, the initial.
Bodyworks whenever I first started working. I was grandfathered into my monthly gym rate there for a while.
And then when they left and sold it off to the North Club, which North Club's out by the bowling alley and stuff, they took over that space. And then that's when they got rid of all that martial arts staff that was there and then brought in Paul and I, and we merged.
Okay.
So that was 2008 about.
Yeah, I remember Phil coming in there and seeing him in person for the first. It was 2008. He was the NCAA wrestling champion, so he comes in fresh out of that, and I was like, oh shit, you're like a 6 foot. I felt like he was he might as well have been 8
long
feet
and
tall.
Lengthy,
dude, a natural. You see him, you're like, this dude is an athlete. Like he has the athlete build. I was like, this dude's gonna crush.
Yeah,
he's absolutely gonna go. I don't remember why he made the transition out of UFC to what did he go to?
Bellator.
Bellator.
But it's just because he as great as he was, that just shows you how great some of these fighters are. He just wasn't,
he's like an amazing athlete.
Right. He just wasn't there. They didn't give him their contract. His striking wasn't the most amazing.
Yeah, I remember that. I feel like that's what he went there to work on. So
that's part of, he went out to California.
Yep.
To work with some high level, Rob Kamen, some high level guys. And, but his striking just wasn't at that peak level. And that's what entertains fans.
Right.
Taking people down to the ground and laying on them.
Right. I'm not buying tickets to this pay-per-view to watch him submit this guy in the first round.
That's why you see all these wrestlers that go to that level, because there's a lot of wrestlers that get into it.
Yeah.
But they get there and they got to learn striking. There's only so long you can take guys down and dominate them, and it's boring.
Yeah, and if you're not able, in the event that you're not able to eat a few before you get them there,
that's why these guys are so well-rounded anymore that even guys didn't wrestle all their life. That certainly helps. If you can't take them down, they'll knock your head off. And so
you don't want that either.
That's what fans want to see. They don't want to see a wrestling match. They can come to Penn State and watch great wrestling.
I mean, they're basically, aside from them not killing each other, this is like the modern day gladiator we're watching. Yeah.
But with tons of skill.
Right. Yeah. Totally different set of combat.
So that's why, I mean, Phil, he had a great career. And I think he might have been a Bellator champion at one point, or at least.
I haven't followed, honestly, and closely enough in the last like 5 years. I had not gotten to follow as much, but I did follow his career while I could, because I was like, this is a Penn State alum. Like, I'm going to support him.
Got that Bo Nickel now, another Penn State alum that
great fight recently.
Yeah, and it'll all be determined how good his striking can get. So obviously he's a dominant wrestler.
Yeah, for sure.
But again, to sell the tickets, he has to show some good striking.
Well, I think he's going to get there, man. He seems like he's got the grip.
He will, yeah. He's an athlete. He has the passion for it and the motivation, I think. And it goes back to Khabib. I mean, initially, he's just a wrestler, but then he turned into a pretty good striker.
Yeah.
And just one of the best in the world, if not greatest of all time, potentially.
Yep.
So, and John Jones, again, wrestler.
Another absolute savage.
Yeah. It's these wrestlers that, they develop, first of all, they have that wrestling skill. But then it's mentality too that wrestlers develop.
I would imagine shooting and knowing that you're going in for somebody is like a big part. If you have that in your blood as the foundation of where you come from in your fighting game in general, you're going to be good if you can get your striking down and get yourself inside there.
Well, and if you don't have great striking at an amateur level, if you're up against a great striker, generally. If you can take a few shots,
you got a chance.
You'll take the guy down, then maybe it's over.
Right.
But again, at that highest level, all those guys are so good at every aspect: boxing, kickboxing, submissions, and wrestling. So
when you decided, you said you and Paul partnered and moved over. What kind of possessed you to kind of go that route? I feel like you yourself, did you decide to avoid a fighting career, or did you I guess I'm more curious about why. It's really, I'm in this phase of my life, and to relate to this personally, where I am helping a lot of people do certain things that are going to go further in their respective industries than I could have when I was trying to go down them. Yeah. And so I've realized that my role is not to keep trying to go down this particular path, but my role is to be here and tee up the next generation of people that I feel like have all the potential, but none of the skill sets and none of the core essentials that they need, the pillars that they need to kind of grow from.
Well, yeah, this is definitely not the path that I planned, when I was younger. But when I came down here, while I was training at the gym, I did go to Penn State after I was here for about a year or so. So I got my degree from Penn State and was working in the area, and that's when Bill died. And so 2 reasons. I mean, what a great job to coach martial arts, and with my best friend who was Paul.
Right, and you were there probably often enough already.
Right. And then one of my other best friends had just died. So it was real important for Paul and I to carry on his name and his lineage. And so that was a big part of it. And so I continued with that for, 10 years or something like that. And then at that point, I kind of got burned out with martial arts and just wanted a new path. Plus, I needed some kind of stable career.
Yeah, for sure.
So my whole family are educators. My parents were high school teachers.
So you're the black sheep here.
Yeah, well, when I went to school, when I went to college, I went for phys ed health. I wanted to be a teacher, coach, live off that, summers off kind of thing.
Right. So, yeah, it's not a bad gig if you lay it out right. It's a pretty good gig.
So then I went to grad school, and I think 2009 or 10. I can't even remember years anymore. But so I was going to get my master's in school counseling. I was on my way out. But then as I was doing my field experience at the state high, my advisor, Steve Goodoff, he was a local football coach, and he had trained with me as well. And he had kind of exposed me to the hand fighting stuff that he'd seen some of these coaching clinics. So I was like, well, he showed me a video, and I was like, I know all that stuff. That's JKD.
Right. Yeah. You're like, oh, yeah, that's okay.
And then I was like, I can add some stuff to it. I could add some boxing and so forth. So that got me all motivated. And then when I was doing my field experience, I hung out with the phys ed teachers a lot. So I developed a phys ed curriculum. So my whole time at State High for my school counseling field experience to get my school counseling master's.
You were building your curriculum.
I was doing other stuff that were more interesting to me, which was the football, hand fighting, and then the phys ed curriculum. So my master's degree kind of just, I paid for it and never used it. But I benefited from doing that.
Yeah.
So when I was ready to get out of martial arts, and I was struggling with the egos and the crap of it sometimes.
Yeah.
And again, I wanted a more secure future. But it turned out that worked out, and I got inspired again, and then stuck with it. And now,
it's funny that it happened in like building block phases, right? Like each step is kind of like you need the foundation you had for everything up until whenever you start going for your master's. And then by the time you make that transition over and you do that, it's like, oh, wait, I can actually kind of plug a few of these things here.
Yeah, it was all work. Like to a certain degree, I am kind of a counselor at the gym. I get so many different backgrounds, personalities. They're all there for different, similar reasons potentially, but different.
Right.
Whether it's mentally, physically, emotionally, socially, I want to meet more people. There's so many great things about martial arts other than the physical aspect.
Right.
And so people from all walks of life, all different countries, different ages, genders, everything. So I'm kind of, being a school counselor in another area.
More on your terms, probably.
And on my terms, right. I don't have to deal with, parents yelling at me or administrators telling me what I have to say.
Listen, they paid to come here.
Yeah, right. Yeah, so I'm careful with that. I wait till they're there for a couple months. And I tell them what I really think.
Yeah.
How
Can't scare away too quick.
Right. So yeah, it's almost like what I thought I was going to change and do a career path in the counseling field. It's almost like I do some of that right at the gym in a different way.
Yeah, I figured. I mean, you
possibly,
imagine
probably
the upbringing you have through the martial arts realm, just to getting up all the way up to that point where Lombard MMA is running out of Lionheart. Like, you've gotten so many different egos and different types of people you experience. There's just so many people you run into along the martial arts path, right? Like, there are just so many different types of martial artists, and the egos that aspect is a really big aspect of it. And so if you have the experience with it and you come with that counseling background mentality, that's the best way to sort of thread the needle to get all the different different ego types and structures and fighters and martial artists and get them together and be like, okay, this is how we get rowing in the same direction to get to where we want to be, because you need to work on this for sure, because this is going to hold you back. And I mean, I've had the pleasure of at least filming some stuff in the class a couple years back and just sort of watching your coaching style. And I mean, you're not so hands-on that it's like debilitating to be able to learn from, but you're able to be like, did you notice how? Yeah. And that to me is more helpful than anything else. Yeah. A practical teacher is. Yeah.
And years ago, like I'm 52 now. So, 15 years ago, I still had a huge ego and a lot of piss and vinegar in me. And I wanted to coach fighters and everybody else, great, whatever.
Right.
But then, as you get older, you just try to see things differently and you get over that stage. And now it's about, I have fighters. I have really successful fighters at our gym.
How many fighters do you have in the gym right now?
Well, we'll average about 5 a year, or from fall to spring.
I know that probably sounds like, to anybody listening, that probably sounds like a small number, but that's a lot to That's like wrangling chickens, basically.
Well, we're not a fight gym. We're a gym for everybody, but we have good fighters. But we select them a certain way. They have to be good people. They have to give back. They got to listen. I'm not going to sit there and waste my time if they're just have their own agenda and their own egos and they just think they know everything. Go somewhere else. There's 2 other good gyms in town. Go over there.
Go.
So if you don't like our style or how we want good people fighting for us. And it's easy to coach good people because they'll listen, they'll show up to class on time, they'll be nice and helpful to everybody else. They're not going to have their ego bigger than the gym. So that's real important, but we're more about, the person that's 105 pounds that never played a sport in their life. or they've had some issues in their past with physical situations, or they're there to maybe help their mental capacity and get stronger mentally. Meeting friends. It's a social environment. I've actually had people that have gotten married through there, and then emotionally, I mean, just, they might be shy, quiet. They get in there, and it's real important to me that everybody knows my gym is safe and friendly, ego-free. Everybody knows everybody's name. I try to remember everybody's name. That's important. But everybody introduce themselves whenever we get ready to do drills at the beginning level. We introduce ourselves, and people meet each other, lifelong friends.
Yeah, man. It's such a peculiar art form, right? Because it's not like anything else. You really you're getting in touch with your own body, and then you're also kind of learning how to navigate other bodies and other body types, right? When you're drilling and sparring and stuff, it's not always the case that you get to have somebody that's in your weight class. So you got to learn to kind of adapt and roll with that.
And the bigger people have to, again, everybody works with each other. Our fighters will have their own time to work and prepare and prepare for success. But other than that, they work at the level of the people that they're training with. So they got.
There's benefit in that too, right?
There
like
is,
when you're at when you've reached an upper level, it's important to be able to extend the ladder down. And part of what I think the benefit of doing that is you also learn to sort of solidify the fundamentals that you're kind of helping to kind of showcase and coach.
Tell my guys all the time, train like you're a white belt every day. Like you're just seeking learning and focus on the basics. And as you're working with somebody that's not as experienced or skilled as you help them to get better. So eventually they can help you.
Yeah.
So if you help this person, it's like a ladder effect. So if you get them better, they'll get better, and then they help you get better. If you're always the top dog in the gym and you're just dominating everybody, you're not growing or progressing.
Yeah, I'd liken that to
you're better than what you are.
If you're somebody who's just naturally, for whatever, maybe your dad and your dad's dad and your dad's dad's dad all wrestled and did martial arts together, to a certain degree, that seems like it's almost genetically built into your muscle memory too. So some people can come with a natural affinity for fighting, and if you're the top, like you said, if you're at the top constantly of where you are, that's just as much of a detriment, right? Because then you don't have to work as hard to be better as people.
And you become lazy and complacent. Complacency is not a good thing.
No, man, you can get outworked for sure. That's a fact.
It's hard work and that complacency is it's a bad place to be. And that's where, when I was ready to get out of the martial arts, my ego was big, I guess, and I just was getting sick of all that, just everybody.
It's a lot.
As I got older or whatever, I just saw the different positives of it and grasped onto that a little bit more. And now, if you get people come in with egos or stories, you just kind of whatever. Probably not the place for you.
Yeah. So, and you are the kind of person who's I'm going to be honest. That's,
and I try to be. You always want to support and help people get better, but you want to be straight up with them too. If they stink at a technique, shouldn't be like, oh, that looks great.
Yeah.
You can say, well, okay, that looks good, but we still got some work to do. And I think people appreciate and respect that. Of course, I don't want to beat them down saying, well, you suck and you'll never get it good.
Yeah, it's got to be criticism in a constructive manner, right?
Yeah. But I still, as a coach, I still know I have a lot of places I can improve. And probably that positive reinforcement I could work on some more. But with our fighters, we break them down. Because they're in fighting. They're not playing baseball. They're not playing soccer. They got 10 other guys, 9 other guys, or if they strike out, they walk back to the dugout. This one, if you can't deal with adversity or always being pat on the butt how great you are, then you shouldn't be in the fight game because you'll get hurt.
There is always somebody stronger.
Yeah. And sometimes this person might not even be better than you, but he catches you.
Yeah.
Because you get complacent or you think you're better than what you are.
Or you're paying attention to the gym. There's so many different reasons why you can get punched in the face as it turns out.
And you get guys and gals or whatever that if they're not focused in the gym and training, then that means they lack focus.
Yeah.
And in any sport. But again, especially combat sports, if you're not focused, especially in that cage or ring, then you get hurt. And, not only do you lose, but you get hurt potentially. So there's a lot on the line there. So
there's some brain cell loss as well occasionally. Right. The CTE is real, right?
So, I'm thankful for that path. My path's been.
Yeah. Aren't they all? Who's is not? Right. That's what I'd like to know.
I think if your path's just like this, isn't that boring?
It would be. If I knew that I wanted to be a chemist in 3rd grade and I stuck to that path and I was just like, oh, yeah, math. That's what I do.
Right.
And ended up there.
I'd probably going, man, they're probably drinking a lot.
Probably
just to entertain themselves. But so,
I guess I've never felt myself being in the position where I could ever see myself being. I didn't know what I wanted to do after high school. Fucking certainly. Right. And then after I got out of college, all my job offers were not necessarily things I didn't want to do. They were just like they were government contracts. So they were 8-year contracts, and I had a lot less control over what my next 8 years was going to look like. And at 23, as a hopeless romantic, I was like, oh, how am I going to find somebody that's going to love me in the next 2 years to be able to like move with me if I have to move somewhere every 2 years? And then they have to want to do that. Yep. I didn't really have that path. And I can appreciate that it does work for some people. I've dated women that's worked for. I have really good friends that have gone off into their careers and do their thing. And I'm sure that they are happy with doing what they want to do. But I'm like, you just see how quickly you're like, not for me, I think. I don't think that's on the cards for me that way.
I think it's, it's constructive sometimes to have that roller coaster. It builds character.
Yeah, man.
Sometimes life sucks.
Yeah.
And it could last more than a day. It could last months.
Yeah.
But then you eventually break out, or you'll dig yourself out of it, or you have support. Support's important. Nobody can do it by themselves.
Yeah, no man's an island.
Yeah. So, as long as you got, friends that care about you, or mentors, whether it's teacher or coach or whichever. Of course, family, obviously number one. But
if you're lucky enough, right? Like some people
don't have that support.
A lot of fighters have to go through that, where like their parents are like, "What are you doing with this thing you're doing?" I mean, in any art form that is the case, but with combat sports specifically.
Yep. No, I give credit to people that are athletes or that don't have that home life or their upbringing that was supportive, whatever. But they figure out a way to get themselves out of it and find the right people to guide them. I'm sure they went through some crap, whether legally or whatever. But I give those people credit because, it's not some people come from just a easy cake life. Great for them, but they haven't had much hardship. And so when they do have a hardship as an adult, they don't know how to handle it. Yeah.
And I feel in the back half of my life now, I'm like, you know what? I can appreciate the adversity that I went through now. As much as I didn't love it then, you meet some people that are your age and you're like, wow, you've really never gone through a few things that have transformationally changed me because of they were things that happened to me.
Yep.
It's comparison is the death of happiness, right? Because like it's hard to, if you're trying to compare to see who's got the better or whatever, it's like there's just so many variables to go into in the first place. How are you ever going to figure out who has the upper advantage to anything?
Yeah.
Do you have sort of like an approach for the training and development of fighters at your school? Like I don't know if you get people that start taking classes and are like, you know what, like I'm going to give this a go. I think I'm going to go for it.
Well, I get a lot that, especially with the boys, like, I want to fight, I'm like, and then I'll ask them what experience they have. I've been fighting for a while. And I was like, what do you mean? It's like, well, and, me and my brother been wrestling around. Me and my roommates. I was like, okay, that's,
never whatever. Lost a bar brawl.
Right. So, but get a lot of boys that want to do that. But I teach when people come in, doesn't matter what their background is, size, gender, anything is, I teach everybody the same. So every fighter we have that at least started with me, they all start out the same as everybody else, go through the basics, the fundamentals, make sure they have good attitude.
Yeah, I mean, from your perspective, you got to be able to gauge, right? Yeah. Like you have to actually kind of get a semblance of what you can tell if somebody's like, like, I'm a really good striker. And then you run them through your striking.
Guys that pretty athletic and look good, they have a crappy attitude. And I don't want to coach them. I'll coach them in the realm of, they're a member and they're going through the process, but because fighting, the fighters at our gym are still members, unless they're also, if they're not members, they're also committed to help coaching. But they have to follow a certain process, and they'll do some extra training on their own, and there's time given to them because we want them to be successful.
Right.
But I'm not going to want to give that time to somebody that has a crappy attitude and thinks they're above the gym. So we start everybody out the same, no matter their athletic ability or not or size. And they follow the process. And then nobody really fights through our gym unless they've been there about a year. Not only so they have that training and the fundamentals to how we want to do it, but we see how their attitude and ego is as well.
Big time.
Because when we go to events, we want to represent ourselves good physically in the ring and be successful, but we don't want to be jackasses either, because there's a lot of jackasses in mixed martial arts and sports. Competition.
Right. And people that are trying to sell tickets a little too early.
Everybody has, it's just, so call me old school, but I believe old school is still appropriate these days. Just respect and and courtesy for your opponents, or just the event in itself or the sport in itself. So
yeah, I mean, the attitude is the new sort of etiquette when it comes to being in the gym in that capacity.
Like, I get at a professional level, you gotta sell tickets. But if all our guys are amateurs,
right?
So
they're trying to get to the pro realm.
But you're representing the gym, your coach, yourself. Maybe your family if you want to go that far. But so you have a responsibility other than yourself. So don't be a jackass.
Do you have like do the fighters, or have any of the fighters, I guess, that have come through you, like, do they have sort of like teams around them that they have to kind of like work with? I don't know if you end up getting into a situation where you're dealing with somebody who's like an up and coming amateur athlete who, for whatever reason, has a manager who's trying to like help him get fights.
No, we don't. I mean, over the last 15 years, we've had a lot of really good amateurs and few that have wanted to go the pro direction. And usually pretty much every time, we've had somebody that can go pro. They're that skill level and have that motivation. I usually direct them, you got to go somewhere else. Because, again, to be a pro, that's a daily grind.
Different level.
And you got to have coaches that are going to give you the daily grind as well. I don't have time for that. And I'm the only coach, so we just don't have a platform for that. And then you need great training partners. You need training partners that are at a pro level as well.
They're going to push you.
Yes. You can't have a pro that's training with a bunch of beginning amateurs and then a coach that doesn't have the time to give to you, because I got to run a business.
Right.
And to keep my lights on, that 99.5% of the members that don't fight, there's what's important. I keep the lights on for these pros or whatever. So usually the pros are pretty much always, you got to go somewhere else. You got to find a gym that has other pros, and that's what they're built for.
Well, there's, they have,
and that's where they get the managers and stuff. So that's what I was.
Yeah, for sure. But that's good, right? Because ideally, you're setting them up foundationally. So that, I mean, it's aside from the fact that you would have to dedicate that amount of time, the fact that you don't have to then, but you're able to upstream them to somebody who's going to give them that kind of attention. You've given them a person that is, from a management perspective, is going to be way easier to work with as long as you can keep that. Yeah, if they keep that attitude going forward, right?
And they should, I would think. And we really try to gauge that. And you also got, where my gym's located, we're 90% Penn State students, or close to that. So a lot of these guys that are fighting for me, and girls, they're engineers. They're, they're getting a degree in something where they're not going to go get their head bashed in.
Right.
They're just doing this because it's challenging to them, and maybe they played sports in high school, or just a dream of theirs. And so, they're having an amateur career, and that's what they're looking for. So most of the fighters I've had over the last 15 years, if anybody's had over 3 fights, that's a lot.
Yeah, for sure.
Most of them only have 1 or 2 fights, and then they're on to a better life and career. They're not going to be a UFC fighter or a pro boxer.
Well, I mean, people think the barrier to entry to that level is just stay in the course until you get found. But the reality is what it takes to get there. I mean, you watch
Ty Silver's so good, and you got to be a freak.
And with the benefit of YouTube now, and a lot of these guys having fight video teams that are there with them to kind of follow these fighters, it's really nice to be able to see an opportunity where that you kind of get to see what they are going through, because that communication now is developing other martial artists everywhere that are now in this position where they can be like, oh, you know what? I'd like to mix that into our training regimen. As much as it's going to suck to go through, you're like, I know I'm going to benefit from doing that.
There's not money in pro fighting, combat sports. Highest level guys, they'll make a ton of money, but the lower
you
level
get that contract
pros
first.
they're not making any money.
It's an investment, if anything.
Yeah, they're fighting 1 or 2 times a year. They're maybe hoping on, I don't know, some endorsements, but it's just tough. And that's why you hear a lot of these beginning pro fighters live on people's couches and live in apartments with 5 other fighters or 7 other fighters, whatever. So
it's like a fighter apartment, duplex that they all live in.
So everybody, but there's different gyms. There's gyms for pro fighters. There's gyms for community. There's gyms for, I like to think of mine as just, for everybody.
Well, there's a reciprocal relationship in that, right? Like, if you're able to upstream these guys to other gyms, you would imagine that these guys in other gyms might be like, hey, you know what? Like, I don't think you're ready for this yet at the foundational level, but it would make sense for them to be like, go down there, get 6 months to a year in with him, where I know you're going to be well rounded out, coming back to us at a later point, or we can reevaluate at a later time. Instead of we're going in a different direction conversation.
And that's what I like to think, that we coach everybody. Learn the fundamentals. As they get more experience, they can develop their own style potentially, as long as they have that basic structure. And everybody's a different athlete, and all our fighters are different: athletic ability, height, weight, whatever. But yeah, if they do go on to pro, hopefully they'll go there to have a good foundation. But then, I'll support them. And if they want to come back to me and talk to me or train me, great. But I'm not going to be their main coach because it's too hard to juggle, having a pro fighter here, some amateur fighters here, and then you have 95% of your other membership
that have class at 6:30.
Yeah, right. They're in it for their reasons too that are just as important as the pro fighters' reasons.
Yeah.
So it's just hard to do all that, and you got to have multiple coaches, and you got to have other pro fighters, as we talked about. And then the thing with fighting that I really like I love coaching amateurs. I love developing and building them up.
It's an exciting period in a fighter's career, right?
And not all coaches can do that. Some of these pro coaches, not that they can't, but they already get guys that are well-oiled machines.
Right.
They're just strategizing with them.
They just got to put them through their paces and do what they're going to do at that level.
They run the structure of their pro gym. But here it's nice because whether they're a fighter or just a member that joined a gym for a semester or 2 semesters, it's lifelong. So if you fought and you went through that mentally, physically, it's very enduring, hardest sport there is, in my opinion. Combat sports, especially the ones where you get punched in the face. Yeah. That sets you up for life in general. Like
what you can do out of the gym now.
Relationships, confidence. And I got through that. Okay, I can get through my boss or whatever being a jerk to me one day or a tough relationship or whatever it might be. So it's pretty empowering not just to see them be successful in the sport, but knowing that this is helping them mentally, emotionally to get through some real tough times that are coming down the road in their future.
So getting out of to move out of just the gym, even though it takes place in the gym, how did you get integrated in with Penn State football to start kind of helping their athletes? Because I watch a lot of working for WPSU and doing a lot of stuff with Unrivaled, I'm watching a lot of the training camp videos, and I probably edited, I can't even tell you how many videos that had to do with their camps. Yeah. And you watch the drills that they're going through, and then you start seeing some of the hand slapping motions that are going on. You're like, oh, I get this. And you see why it's a part of the drill, especially if you're, an O lineman or D lineman. Yeah. And so what's the introduction to getting you integrated in with Penn State to help them out? Because it's clearly a beneficial thing for them to be able to integrate with the local community in regards to you being a local business. Yeah. In that these athletes benefit from this training as well.
Yep. So going back to what we were talking about a little before, when I was doing my school counseling masters, whatever, and I did my field experience, and I pretty much spent 10% of the time doing my school counseling stuff to learn how to be a good school counselor. And I spent more time, I'm sure you're aware that most football coaches at schools, or whether they're math teachers, whatever they're on their off time or even during class time, they're writing out plays.
Oh yeah,
they're
sure.
figuring out what they're going to practice. So my school, he was great advisor for being a school counselor, but he'd sit in there and write his plays out. And so we'd talk football pretty much my whole field experience, and then talk about different hand ideas. And then the other time I sat out over the phys ed teachers developing a phys ed curriculum that I sell now to schools. But so that's where I got started with it. He gave me the idea, showed me some videos from Penn State camps, and I saw they had I think a Taekwondo guy that was coming in here showing motions. So I watched the video, and as I mentioned earlier, I was like, oh, okay, that stuff all looks familiar to me, and I think I can add some stuff, especially with the Wing Chun background I had.
Definitely, yeah.
And then the boxing. So I was going to develop this program that would have Wing Chun, mostly Wing Chun movements and concepts, and then boxing, a lot of boxing, and then some wrestling and a little bit of Thai boxing. So I blend together, and I had to been, 2013 or so. So I started working with that. I was showing different coaches or working with high school kids, not really charging anybody, just trying to see what this was all about.
Feeling it out.
Yeah. Worked with a couple
of high school teams. You're developing it, really. Yeah. You're really fully developing the curriculum by testing it out.
I didn't want to make a fool of myself.
Right,
certainly. So I wanted to make sure, okay, I saw what this guy was doing, and I was, I copied some of the stuff he was doing. So then eventually I did that for a couple of years, and then fortunately I live across the street from Penn State University, so I started just basically stalking players through Facebook. There was no Instagram back then, or I don't know if there was Twitter, but and then I'd find emails and email coaches. I wasn't getting anything back, but finally, Sean Stanley, I think he was a D lineman, might have graduated in 2014 or something. He finally was like, "Oh, I'll come down and check it out." He had finished his career and was going to go on to the combines or whatever.
Oh yeah, the NFL Combine. Yep. Yeah.
So he came down, gave a shot, and he liked it. And then he went back and told his D-line coach, who was Larry Johnson at that time.
Okay.
And so Larry came down and we talked and had a good relationship. And then when the Paterno group left, this was right before Bill O'Brien got there.
Okay.
It was like the fall or the spring before Bill O'Brien came in. So then when Bill O'Brien came in, he kept Larry Johnson as part of the staff. But Craig Fitzgerald was a strength coach. He came in with him. And so somehow he got wind, and then I began stalking him. And so he sent down one of his assistant coaches to train me. So then I started showing him all my ideas. And that kind of got it rolling. And then
it's a time game, right? Like it's the amount of time you invest into it. At first it's a numbers game.
Persistent.
If you keep saying the pass, eventually something's going to roll through there.
I was one of those, I was like, oh man, I'm probably just ignoring these guys, but whatever. Just somebody's going to like at least reach out. And then also so when I first got involved with them was right after all the Sandusky crap.
Scandal, yeah.
So, they had little NCAA birdies and trees everywhere.
Right.
So if they were doing anything wrong. So they were very cautious about dealing with me.
Right.
Because
which is kind of anti-ethical to like what they're trying to do, because their goal is to integrate as much of the best training that they can give their athletes to give them the best edge on the field.
Well, they would if they wanted to. So they really didn't know what I was doing yet, and they're still kind of learning. So they couldn't just bring me on campus because at that point, unless you had a triple background check and whatever else, you couldn't even be around the players, and they didn't want to pay me as well because they just didn't know what I was doing yet,
or how to value it.
Yeah, right.
From their
they had no clue. So I just kind of went through a process there. So then some of the players just started coming down to me on their own, and which is
an inevitability too, right? Yeah. Like some of these football players that are big dudes. Yeah. Probably also watch UFC and also are interested in.
And that is why most of them started coming down, because their love of combat sports and UFC. They had no clue what I was doing with the hand stuff. But they started coming down. I wasn't charging anybody. I was just trying to, again, figure it out, get a name, learn. So it was the crew of Anthony Zettel, John Urschel, Daquan Jones. This was all, I think, 2014 or so. Let's see, Carl Nassib was part of that group, Dan Barnes, a bunch of great guys. Anthony Zettel was the main person that came and trained with me. He wasn't playing much as a sophomore, whatever year that was. So he was down 4 or 5 times a week. We were boxing, kickboxing, doing a lot of the hand fighting. And so then as he started to evolve and felt like it was helping him, just word spread and more guys were coming to me, and I still couldn't go up on campus. Well, I could say this, it's years now have gone by, but so they part of my hand fighting, there's other parts of the whole MMA FX that I had, and there was a conditioning part. So back then, Bill O'Brien brought in, and Craig Fitzgerald brought in, like they had 15 heavy bags hanging up in Luba.
Oh yeah,
and so they were up back in the corner. So they had. Again, assistant strength coach would come down. I'd teach him a bunch of stuff. He'd go up and run it. And then once every few weeks, they would allow me to go up there and kind of tell the coach what to do but I would stand like 50 feet away.
Yeah, you're like almost like the consultant coach at that point.
Because they didn't want any crap.
Right.
Like, oh, who's this guy?
Right.
So,
but they can come over and have the conversation by the Gatorade cooler for a second.
Right. So it's just, so I did that for a while, but again, that's where it all got started. Some guys are willing to check it out. Again, I think their love of combat, the similarities between combat sports and football are.
It is also a combat sport.
There's not a mixed martial arts athlete or a boxer or kickboxer that doesn't love football.
Right.
There's not a football player that doesn't love UFC or combat or boxing or anything like that.
Something about the lure of like chasing after the concussion or something.
Right, I don't know. Exactly. Yes. Yeah. So that got started there, and then word spread. So I worked a lot with Penn State players, and then eventually from there, in the football world, it's a lot of word of mouth.
Yeah.
Like I could have the greatest website, a bunch of cool Instagram videos or whatever, but it's all about if this coach tells his buddy who he used to coach with at previous school.
That's how their whole
10
world
years
works.
ago. It is. And so coaches were telling coaches, players, and then that's where it started to explode a little bit. And I went to Alabama and Oklahoma and Washington, name a few, to coach them. And then I most recently I was with the New York Giants because some Penn State coaches had gone there when they were with Joe Judge
Oh, yeah, Sean Spencer did.
Sean Spencer did. And it's Craig Fitzgerald, who was the guy that gave me my original chance, him and Sean Spencer. He was there as a strength coach. It was no brainer. So they brought me in, and I started working a lot with the Giants players. And
I was sad to see Coach Spencer go because he used to rip around in his Harley around the area.
Yeah,
and
such a great guy.
Working with his footage, I mean, you listen to the pregame and halftime game, like locker room speeches that he would give me goosebumps, man. He was incredible.
Well, he's become a good friend of mine. He's done a lot for me to help with this. He's a big hand fighting advocate. Even before he came here,
he's a wild dog, dude.
Yeah, exactly. So when he rides here with the Coach Franklin staff, all the players are like, oh man, you got to meet this guy. He's great. He loves hand stuff. He's about my age. And then we just connected right away. And then he's helped me out. We've done a lot of clinics together, traveled for clinics.
That's awesome.
And then he's been, he's told a lot of coaches that have brought me in.
That's that word of mouth, man.
Yeah. He brought me down to Florida when he went down to Florida. But with him, when I would travel with him, he has all that energy. And he's a football coach, and but
he's such a character. Like,
yes.
If anybody listening does not know him, please look him up. He is incredible,
amazing, but friendly as heck. And he does a lot of things that people don't notice to help people. He'll talk to anybody. We'd be in the cities, and there'd be a homeless person, and he'd go up and give him time. He would never. So he lived in cities before, so I'd be like, can we give him $5? He's like, no, you just buying some food. Because he always tell me, so with that $5 or $10, he potentially going to go buy something he probably shouldn't.
Doesn't need
alcohol, right?
Yeah.
So he just would, but he would do that. He would just give. He's just a very generous person. So if you get all that wild dog kind of craziness that he needs for
he's
coaching,
a teddy bear.
Yeah, he's just a very personal, talk to anybody, and I can't wait for the day when he gets his own team as head coach, which has to come someday soon, I would think.
I would hope so, man. I can't think of a lot of people in the field that are more deserving.
No, he's just he's top notch.
The Franklin era coaching staff and just staff in general that I got to interact with and work with footage, I'm literally watching them be who they are, in a locker room full of young athletes that they're trying to shape and mold into the next generation. I mean, I've had the pleasure of meeting, this helmet was signed by basically everybody that played this year and went to the Rose Bowl. Yeah. And I think he caliber of instructor wise has brought in a lot of people that you're going to see him go far.
Yeah.
Because they're all of that ilk, right? They're all of that, that fortitude of character that they're good people to be involved with, and real recognizes real, right? So if they know that you're showing up and you're the helpful person that you are to do what you're doing, it's a no-brainer to them to start being like, hey, you actually should check this guy out. This has helped us big time with this, and this, and especially when a coach has a specific angle of a problem that he's dealing with his training regimen or his coaching regimen for his players. They have an easier way of figuring out how to get to the root of the problem and get it addressed.
Well, and I was interesting you bring that up. I was training one of the guys today, and we're just talking about things, and I said, I'm amazed that more football athletes don't seek out a mixed martial arts or a boxing coach in particular.
I bet in 5 years we'll see that shift a little bit.
Potentially, but I said that 5 years ago. Even when I first saw this idea and I started playing around with it, I was like, why aren't more football athletes exploring this? And maybe they just didn't know. And I got a website, I got word of mouth and stuff, but it just still seems like it's just not as much as I thought it would be. And part of that reason we got in today was, I did pro bono for a number of years to try to learn, and I still try to do the best I can, especially with collegiate athletes that might not have the money to do. But so before all this last couple of years with this NIL stuff or whatever, really no player could come down because they couldn't afford it.
Right.
They have no money unless they came from, like their parents had some money that they wanted to put into it. So,
but now you got, Sean Clifford's Limitless Agency and then
just
all the different successful guys
before they could barely afford to, buy, a few cheeseburgers on a dollar.
Oh, I've heard horror stories. Yeah, for sure.
And so,
but now they can invest in themselves.
Yes, exactly. And that's what it's all about. It's investing. Like the guys that work with me are investing in themselves.
Right. Because if they see the benefit of it, it doesn't matter if the coaching staff's going to offer it. But if you're doing clinics still, that's great. They're getting it there.
Right.
But hell, the clinics then work as sort of like an upstream to getting people to be like, hey, you know what? That clinic was great, but I'd like to spend a couple more months with you if I can.
Well, it's just like anything, no matter what you're learning, if you learn how to cook, dance, whatever, if you're in a group of 20, you're going to learn and going to progress. But if you're one-on-one attention with a professional, whatever interest you have, you're going to progress quicker, and you're going to get all little attention to detail stuff that you can't probably get in a larger class.
Right, especially if you're drilling with a lot of other people that are also still trying to figure it out. There's a lot of nuance that goes into it that people don't think about.
And the hand fighting is very articulate, and it's important for me. It's going to sound Bruce Lee-ish, which it is. It's, if I can feel his energy, and I can help him much easier if I'm the person he's working with, as opposed to me watching a group of 10 and I'm trying to see what they're doing and how I can fix it. So it's just, that one-on-one. So now guys can afford it. So they can afford to come in, and that's a big thing. Like you said, they're investing in themselves. So, it's like that money is going to somewhere to hopefully make them more money.
Well, a lot of these athletes are, Sean Clifford's a perfect example of this. Starting Limitless happened after the NIL agency dropped, and I had Aeneas Hawkins on. We were talking.
Yeah, I saw that.
And he was like, dude, he asked me one time to come in, and I thought, I was not playing anymore, so I was like, yeah, let's do this. Born off of a couch basically, and a lot of them have this entrepreneurial spirit, and so in honor of that, they are able to kind of articulate early on as not just athletes, but as people, that it is important to invest in myself, and they're being preached to them for the most part in the coaching aspect, but if they can look outside of the box a little bit and think about other ways that they can help themselves, and they're introduced to something that really kind of sparks that for them, that's almost no different than you realizing that there was that crossover and getting reinterested in martial arts again. It's that's the kind of stuff that can reinvigorate them with football, because football's a lot of drilling, and if you don't get outside of the box of what you're being drilled and trained in for your position, or if you're offensive training or defensive training, you can kind of get I don't want to say bored, but it does get to a point where you feel like you're not advancing. And
and that's interesting you brought that up. We were just talking about that again today, and I've talked about it with other guys before. It's even though we just said that combat sports very similar to football as far as mentality, the physical nature of it, but you're doing football drills day after day after day. It's like, oh man,
God forbid you're talking about 2 a days, right?
And then so going out and doing boxing or whatever they're doing with me, it's just different. So it's martial arts kind of, but so it's not the same monotonous football talk. And
there's some muscle confusion in there too, right? You're using your body in different ways now, and that's going to keep you limber ultimately.
And then so they develop, and they already kind of have an interest, or maybe even they think they have this potential passion for combat sports. But then when they start getting involved with it more, then they really realize wow, these movements are so similar to what I do in football.
Right, you're connecting dots for them.
I'm just making it better because I'm tightening it up. Because good martial arts coaches and combat sport coaches, they're very knowledgeable in body mechanics.
Yeah.
Because, again, this is the ultimate sport of body mechanics.
Yeah.
Because especially mixed martial arts.
It's a crash course.
Yeah. You got 4 sports: wrestling, kickboxing, boxing, and submission grappling is basically wrestling. But you're trying to blend that all together. But body mechanics are important and fundamental. So combat sports, particular boxing, is such a crossover to football.
Well, you figure if you're a D lineman trying to stop somebody, or an O lineman trying to stop a D lineman from getting through, and if you can now feel where they are just by body position and knowing where you have them, you can now as long as you haven't lost them, you have a little bit more comfortability to kind of peer and look around and sort of take stock of what situation you're in and whether or not you're collapsing or if you're helping or
awareness. And there's no other sport that awareness is more important than combat sports, where you're going to get punched in the face or kicked in the leg or whatever. Your awareness better be spot on, or at least pretty close. And conditioning, awareness is conditioning. If you're in great shape, your awareness is much better. So, but understanding that, so everybody might look at boxing, for example. Oh yeah, they see people punching each other all the time, so it's hands. No, boxing is as much footwork in your feet, eye-foot coordination as it is hand-eye coordination.
Yeah.
Because if your feet are slow and suck and you're just sitting there in concrete, you're going to get punched a ton. And that defeats the purpose of you being in the sport.
Right.
So the footwork that we do in boxing and with this cross-training is real important. And then eyes. Teaching or kind of conditioning your eyes to see things either before they happen or at a split second they happen. And that's boxing. Because if you don't have good vision, peripheral vision or timing reaction, you're going to get punched a lot. So it all goes with football.
Hard to avoid what you can't see.
Hands, eyes, and feet. And you can't have any better training, cross-training for that than boxing.
Well, I would imagine so. Also in the martial arts realm, if you're coming from the college football or any football athlete perspective, you've got this you have the similar mindsets, right? Like we talked about that. The other thing is, it's also a different kind of frustration when you're figuring out you don't get something when it comes to martial arts. And if you're drilling football and you're in your position, you've been doing that for probably a long time. Usually you're only kind of jumping over a position or two, and a lot of the drills are very similar between them, or they're all the same for basically everybody in that camp.
Yep.
And so there's something to be said for, not only is it like you can get past the frustration of that just by going through the drilling of it. You've got coaches that are kind of walking you through what you're doing as you're making mistakes or little hiccups here and there. But if you can shift to something else completely that's not necessarily exactly as that, and it'll clear your head, one. But two, you're also going to be in this position where you're going to get to re-deal with some frustration again that when you get on the back half of is going to solidify everything that you had going on before you even stepped into that area.
Well, I get a lot when it's interesting you bring that up because, these Penn State players or NFL guys that work there, they're high-level athletes, probably potentially the best athletes in the world when you put physical and mental together. Like,
I say that like we
basketball maybe
we should have the Olympics run by people like the average person that also is just like the dude who like drinks beer, eats wings, and then is like everybody likes to watch the Olympics and talk shit until they have to be out on the you're out on the yard line and the guns raised.
It's I kind of the basketball athlete at the highest level, again, amazing athletic ability, probably the best. Athletically, physically, but the football athlete has similar skill level of that athletic ability, but they had this mental. Like, how many NBA players could sit there and get crushed 20 times a game by other big dudes bigger than them?
Well, think of the height and length of them, right? Like that aspect alone.
But the mentality, they get touched in the NBA and they start whining and crying and they can't fight worth shit. NFL guys they're just at another level physically and mentally.
Yeah, I mean,
those are
Troy Polamalu. One of my favorite characteristics to him is he was the kind of guy that if he had two or three people that were ready to get him at the sideline, he would just shoulder down and dive in, and like he would go for it, and it would get him that extra yard or two. And that's the stuff that in football really matters.
Exactly, and we talk about football and combat sports. There's a lot of great athletes, a lot of skilled guys that can punch, kick, or play football or whatever. But the guys get to the highest level. What's different is their screws a little bit looser. But they're still cerebral. Right. I mean, they're crazy.
They're aware of the madness they're going into, right?
Yeah, and that separates at the highest level the guys that are all great athletes and are best athletes in the world, but this guy's a little bit nuttier.
It's like this is what makes him truly prolific.
Yes. And so that's important. But yeah, the hand-eye foot coordination that goes into boxing is it's so important for the sport of football as well. And that's why the cross training is so important. And the hand fighting I do is the same thing. We're just trying to. They're already great athletes. Like these guys will come in as about to say with the NFL or Penn State good athletes. They come in and their boxing sucks. And I'm like, damn man, you're this high level athlete at a Division I school powerhouse, or you're in the NFL. But it's just once it doesn't take them long to figure it out.
Right, it's a mechanics issue.
Yes, and what they find out, they go like, okay, so I've been doing kind of my footwork and my arm motions are wrong for my whole football career. Right. So now I understand this, and it builds their confidence, and then sky's the limit.
Yeah, what's the degree to which I excel as a player now, and the ability to like just have make a few micro adjustments to these foundational aspects of things.
It's micro adjustments, good term, because it's not like them doing boxing or the hand fighting with me is going to take them from 3 sacks a year to 15.
Right.
It's just a little part of the puzzle or part of the toolbox that if this can help them get 3 or 4 more sacks a year, okay, well, that's all Big Ten honors maybe. Maybe that's a spot on the playing field as a starter. Maybe that gives me $1 million contract. So,
and with the NIL, I mean, it could be that it could just be any decent contract that you want along the way.
Yeah. So we're just trying to help build that machine a little bit more as a football player. And we talk all the time that every football player is lifting weights because that's what every football coach has told him since he was 6. Whenever they start playing,
they need him to be bigger, so they're bigger than the other team.
Bench press 500. I'm not saying everybody says that, but again, that's a common mindset that you gotta be lift, gotta be powerful, which I agree.
I mean, look at the boys in Iowa, man.
Yeah.
Those are some corn-fed large
big
dudes.
Part of it. Yep. And then footwork. Everybody's doing footwork drills. You see it all the time. And I always ask, what are they doing for their hands? And nothing.
Yeah.
In my opinion, from what I've seen. So
it's not as focused on as the footwork.
No, but it's just as important as your eyes and your feet in this sport.
If you're a D lineman, your handwork is what's going to get you through. Like that's
wide receiver. We work with a lot of wide receivers, O-line guys. They're in the trenches. They're using their hands all the time. They're hand fighting. even D-backs. I mean, we worked with some D-backs, just learned boxing. Charles Tillman, I always call it the Tillman effect, that he caused so many fumbles in his career. He took boxing. He trained in boxing. Yeah. So he was punching them out, but understanding different angles you can punch at and how to punch.
Well, look at the body mechanics, right? Like if the arm is this way, all I got to do is hook right here and catch that hand.
And then understanding angles.
Yeah.
You know, so boxing is important for a D-back potentially. Even when Trace McSorley trained here, he did kickboxing with me. That was mostly for, you know, he liked the sport, I think.
He's already an incredible athlete as well, right?
But it teaches explosion when you're punching, exploding, and using your full body. So even
he certainly benefited
even throwing can be just a little bit of advance. Injury prevention. Sometimes, especially with the kicking, loosening up those hips, the flexibility, that prevents injuries more often than they could happen. So the value of combat sports, cross training with football, I could go on and on and on, which I kind of already have, but
that's what this is for. That's what the whole thing is for.
There's so many ways, but again, we're just trying to improve that athlete, even if it's just a little bit, with that hand-eye foot coordination, especially the hand-eye. And again, if the stats can increase just a little bit because of your confidence with your hands, then that's success.
Yeah, those micro adjustments lead to micro progression, and micro progression over the course of a season or over the course of a year's worth of training is going to be, it's going to be substantial. I think one of my favorite parts about martial arts has always been when you get to the point where you, like, for whatever reason, the right two synapses finally connect and you finally understand this thing that has been holding you back or messing you up for like months. And when you're in that sort of like post, I figured it out, epiphany style euphoria, it's a really good feeling. And from the athlete perspective, it's like every athlete is hard on themselves because it's in the inherent nature of being an athlete. You need to be hard on yourself to, compression is what creates diamonds from coal, right? So the idea that they can kind of embrace that and get it is a little win. And so even though it may seem like a foundational big win, the little win is like, you know what, I get to feel really good about this thing I figured out because this has been something that, when you get a laundry list of things that you're trying to work on as an athlete, regardless of what your sport is, the biggest problem you have is like you can't fix them all at once. So you can only kind of be aware of them and then have them kind of sit in here and start chipping away at ones that you can in the background as you can. And when you get one of those little bastards gone, you're like, it's game over for these bitches. I'm coming now. Like this
and it builds that confidence to get the next technique down that we have. And I see it all the time, whether it's just a regular, I shouldn't say regular member, just a member.
A normie.
Yeah. Well, that's a regular member actually, is our regular members. The people that fight, they're, that's very unusual.
They're irregular people. Yeah.
There's not many of them. But even while we're fighting, there's been times before guys and girls getting ready for fights, and I'm like a week or so out, and I'm like, holy shit, he's not ready. And I'm like, and then all of a sudden.
How do you handle that from the coach perspective? Because you're like, you got to lean into whether or not they're having whether it's like a lull that they're in right now or whether they're just not getting it. And I'm seeing this a week out.
That's when again, I mentioned earlier about how I train my fighters, and not everybody might agree with it, and I don't care. This is just how I do it.
Turns out it's your gym, so I don't know.
Well, my dad was a coach. I study coaches. I'm around athletes all the time. I was one myself, so I know kind of triggers, whatever. But again, the combat athlete, you got to be hard on them. They got to make them survive on their own. If I'm sitting there every day going, "Oh, you're doing so good, Johnny. It's amazing. You're just awesome. Keep doing that," then they're gonna just get complacent, that whole complacency thing. So I'm pretty tough on them, or I don't compliment them a lot. I make them work through things. But then in that last few weeks, if I'm like, oh crap, I don't know if they're ready, then that's when I'm starting to compliment more and be like, okay, we can focus on this. Yeah, because
sometimes it's a confidence thing, right? Like you want them to feel comfortable with where they're at.
Because at that point, the other way's not working because they suck and they're not ready
good on
to
you
fight.
For being able to pivot, right?
Well, yeah, you have to, because ultimately they get in there and they get hurt, it's on me.
Right.
Nature of the sport, it's going to happen. But if it happens because the preparation wasn't there and I didn't guide them through that,
you're the one who's carrying that way, right? Because ultimately, for me, like anytime I ever sparred, if I lost, I knew where my shortcoming was, and I didn't blame my coach for me not being elevated enough to fight somebody who just had that edge on me or whatever it was.
Sparring and gym activity is different because getting beat up a little bit or not being that successful, that helps you grow.
Right.
As long as nobody's getting hurt.
The stakes aren't as high. Yes.
But when they get in that cage or ring against somebody that doesn't know them and they want to rip their head off, because that's part of the sport.
Yeah.
They better be prepared, and that preparation comes through your guidance. And again, as I mentioned, I'm not going to train a fighter that's going to show up late all the time, or not show up, or have a jackass attitude, or not care about his teammates. We don't have those people.
Nobody. You shouldn't want them, right?
Well, but there's gyms that have them because they want the ego to be like, oh yeah, I got a bunch of great fighters. Yeah, well, jerks. Or they're pros, and you're just running a pro gym. You're still running a business, kind of.
Yeah. You're keeping your lights on too. Yeah. I get that.
So thankfully, hopefully it continues this way. The gym does well enough that, like 15 years ago, I would pretty much take anybody, kind of, because it's fun to train good athletes and guys that could be successful, even if they were jerks.
But it's probably better now on the back end to be able to be more selective with who you take on.
And I'm thankful for that.
And that's going to make you a better coach too, because now you're able to pick the projects. I mean, essentially, fighters are people, and those people are projects.
I'll maybe live a few more years longer. I won't drink.
Keep the blood pressure down a little bit.
Right.
Yeah,
because they can really wear you out. And
in what ways?
Just your babysitter.
Yeah.
And I'm not there to be your babysitter. I'm there to coach you, help you succeed in what your goals are and your dreams are.
Yeah, you definitely don't want to play with a bad attitude problem that's taking that outside of the gym and causing other issues.
As I've gotten older and wiser, I think, again, those other people will never fight, never have a chance to, because they're not skilled enough, they don't have the time, maybe they are just as important to me to how they're going to benefit from being at my gym than these fighters.
Well, I think at the level where you're training an amateur fighter to get him ready for pro, the margin for how much they're growing as a fighter is not as great as the one for, like you said, like the 105-pound civil engineer that's coming in there and is basically going to foundationally reformat the way that they approach most of the obstacles that they're going to encounter in their life. You see like a wider it's a bigger margin of problems that life throws at you that you can kind of help them mitigate how to solve and how to handle them mentally. Well,
and some of these people are just in there for whatever reasons,
fitness or whatever.
Never play a sport in their life, whatever it might be. Maybe, even if they play sports, they've never played done a sport that's kind of has this aggressive nature to it. So, and all of my fighters are aware of it. I tell them right from the get-go, I will do whatever I can to help you be prepared. We've had a lot of success. We'll follow a formula, but I'll coach you in the time frame that I'm there to coach you. I'm not coming in on my time.
Right.
You got to commit to yourself, and that's part of the work ethic, and that's part of living life.
Yeah.
So if I'm just holding your hand and doing all this for you, doing all the work for you, then what's going to happen when you go out in the real world and have a job? You're just going to sit there and rely on your boss,
or if you go to the next coach and that coach that's not his style. Like
it's a life growing situation, and being a fighter, if you take that approach. And again, why should I give this person, just because he's skilled enough or has the time or whatever to be a fighter, but this person can't? So I should just be like, well, I'll get to you when I can get to you.
Right.
But you're paying the same membership that this person is. And who knows what you're going to battle in your life. This might help you with that. So I think you just got, as coach, got to keep that even kind of mentality that everybody's just as important as the other. And I'll admit it that, every coach is going to gravitate towards these good athletes, that are getting it right and are figuring it out, because some other members can't for the life of them figure out how to throw this rear hand cross. And I'll sit there and be like, what? Is it me? Is it they're not listening? What is it? But you got to figure it out.
Well, the journey to figuring out your own body and your own body mechanics is a very special one, because we all only get to go through it ourselves. And, and it's compounded, right? Like you go through life and maybe you had like this little injury, or you were in a car accident when you were 6, and then you've been fine for the most part, but then you realize like, oh, actually this arm is not necessarily, it's not really kind of operating the way everybody else. Am I having an issue here? I'm a little tight here. But in doing that, and in that self-exploration of your body, you learn how to sort of like compensate if you have to, but also you can discover, oh, I actually kind of need to get this checked out. Like, this is going to be a rotator cuff injury in like a few years if I don't figure this out now.
Well, you're setting this stuff up good, man. Because I think about this stuff all the time. Is people get in there and maybe physically they're not confident with their body. They've never lifted, never worked out, whatever it might be. But so you're empowering them and making them realize you can do this stuff. If you come to class, Like if you just come to class once every 2 weeks, then there's not much I can do for you.
Right.
You know, you're not hearing a scholarship. I can't make you show up.
Yeah.
Your parents or whoever are paying for this membership, they'd probably be pretty pissed off if you're only showing up once every 2 weeks.
Right.
But if you show up every day or every class or as much as you can, then you will get good in your own little world, but you'll learn more about your body. And yeah, when your body aches or whatever, some people can't get through it, but then they eventually learn how to through that mental toughness of whether they fight or not. It's mental toughness a little bit with this sport, training this sport, and in their own little way. And they get good. They build confidence. They feel better about their body. They feel better about school, whatever it might be. So it's great to see that. And a little bit of shoulder injury that they were whining about a couple years ago. Now I was sitting there like, oh, that's not so bad.
Yeah.
I can get through this because mentally I've grown. I'm stronger. I'm confident. So
and you might not realize that you needed to rehabilitate it to some degree that you weren't paying attention to, and you've been allowing it to kind of sit in this stagnant position or whatever. I was in a car accident. One of the Lord of the Rings movies came out, and when one of the old theaters that was out by the mall was still available, they did midnight showings, and we went out, and that night while we were in there was an ice storm. We were going into Bellefonte and lost control in a patch of ice and smacked into literally the identical car as the one we were traveling in. And I threw like my head into the window and my shoulder into things. I wasn't wearing a seatbelt. And I mean, immediately that was the lesson of like, that's why we wear these. Yeah. Got it now. And if I had, I would have been well, fine. But I bet for like the next 8 to 9 years, I didn't realize that like I had really messed it up and it was messing with other aspects of my body. Like, I was as a musician, I was a server and a bartender for a long time, coming in and out of town because that was how I could keep my job, go on tour, come back, and be able to get right back into making money. Yeah. And when you're carrying trays and doing all that stuff, you always are compensating in some way. As you operate, your body is compensating for some sort of an issue or an imbalance that you're kind of suffering from. And in figuring out why mine was the issue, it was a stretching thing. So I went to some physical therapy finally. I was like, I just kept telling my doctor, I was like, can we just find out if I have to have surgery on this or something? Like, I don't know what's going on, but like it cracks every time I lift up and that doesn't seem like what it should be doing. And I did. So I went to some physical therapy and they would, work with it. And that was a lot of stretching and it sucked. But I had gotten to a point in my life where I was like, I need to commit to this because I don't want to deal with this anymore. Like this is not fun to go through. And it's also kind of, if you think about it from the perspective of living in a college town, it's not hard to end up in a fight here from some drunk asshole who wants to pick one. Days, anywhere really. Be in
Phillipsburg in the middle of nowhere.
Right. So. Yeah. And so like you don't want to be shorthanded on your own just doing that. So it's like, that's not why I did it. I finally just got to the point I was doing a lot of camera operating. So I was like, okay, I can't do this anymore. I'm going to have to fix this. Otherwise I'm going to have to switch what I do for a living because it's going to be a little different for me. But I think there's something to be said for, I didn't love it as a kid going through martial arts and doing this, but when you're really trying to grasp something and maybe it's foundational, maybe it's slightly advanced or whatever, and you're really kind of struggling with it, you're not getting it and your instructor is letting you know you're not getting it. There is this kind of this emotional frustration that kind of comes up, and then that can compound right into your ability to kind of one, stay focused, and B, be able to really absorb what you're doing in your situation and learn from it and start to figure the shit out. And so one of the things that I think that I benefited from in that regard was, I remember being like almost in tears sometimes, like, why don't I get this? Like, one, I keep eating punches and that sucks. And then two, like I can do it slow, but then the second I try to throw it the right way, I'm screwing this up and I'm getting called out for it. And you don't want to be bad. You want to get better. You want to do it right. And because that's the shit that keeps you safe ultimately once you're doing it right. And that breakthrough would be really hard depending on what the technique was. And so for you, do you feel like I have nothing but respect for martial arts instructors in general because there is such a wider range of human emotions you have to deal with. Anger is like the one that I think people think about a lot, but the self-frustration of like, why am I not getting this can really kind of be defeating and suck the wind out of your sails. And you've got to coach people through that. So like, what's your kind of approach for being able to handle the frustration that every martial artist and athlete in general is going to come through?
That solves everything.
It's called the weekends.
And that solves everything. Well, sometimes weeknights, depending on how the students are doing that. I think for coaches, it's hard that, and you got to understand that not everybody, like maybe you grasped it well when you were an athlete or something, and now you're a coach and you've seen everything and you expect them all to figure it out. But most people aren't going to figure it out right away. So, and I struggle with it. I mean, there'll be some nights I'm like, why aren't these guys getting it? I'm just frustrated. But then, you know, you got to try to put yourself in their position that, you know, they're just brand new. It's like me. I don't know crap about computers. So, you know, my web guy, when he was building a website and trying to explain things to me, I'm like, what? And he's to this him, it's basic.
He's like this.
And I'm just, but I understand when he was great. But if he did get frustrated, maybe I get it. So I try to put
listen,
myself.
Bro, I know who I am. So yeah, obviously we are both frustrated here.
When I get frustrated or irritated, because it's human nature, we're all gonna, and especially as a teacher, a coach, whatever, instructor. And I try to do my best to be like, okay, just think of it as somebody's trying to teach me how to work a computer or whatever.
Right.
Or something. And then doesn't always work, but that's what I try to do. And then I can calm down and just keep going with it. And just, you know, that's why I'm very much about high volume, methodical coaching approach, high repetition. So
yeah, I mean, repetition is the key to learning. That's what's going to get it through.
So I like to say there's YouTube gyms out there that, hey, this is cool, let's do this. And there's gyms, I think what's nice that what we do at our gym, and this is the way I was coached as well, we have a beginning level, then a second level, then a third level. Because there's some gyms you go in that you don't know anything, and you're in a classroom with people of all different levels.
Right.
And I know some gyms just have to do that because that's just how it's structured. Yeah. Yep, and they don't have so many coaches or time, whatever. But the nice thing what we do is we do it by levels, and it's certainly important at the beginning level because everybody's a novice. So I just sit there and we rep it out over and over and over again. So whatever we do that first class, we are reviewing it the 15th class and over and over and over again.
Well, I mean, when you're that young and that novice in it, you know, that's, I would say, I don't know if statistically this is true, but it seems like that's actually when it's easiest to get hurt because you don't really kind of understand how to gauge what percentage of like power you're putting behind your strikes and how you're kind of approaching this. Like, are we doing mechanics? Or are we actually trying to knock each other's heads off? Like,
and that's what we make it clear there that, you know, that we're safe, gym first, fundamentals. Nobody spars until they've been there at least 6 months. And that's a very light sparring.
Right.
And then through the repetition. So, you know, where you might lose some people if they're really good athletes and they get it right away, yet they have to continue to do all these reps. You know, some people, if they don't get it in their mindset that, I got to do this again. And we talked about the monotony of stuff. It's like, well, that's how you get good. Great. You might have got it the first weekend and this student doesn't get it till the eighth weekend.
You get to drill it with full understanding for the next 15
exactly.
weeks.
And then you won't appreciate it till down the road somewhere when you get in a fight or you're competing and you're tired, gassed or whatever, you get somebody better than you, but your fundamentals all come back because of what you did I always talk about the first 3 or 4 months. I don't care what sport it is, but certainly combat sports, boxing in particular. That first 3 or 4 months are real important. So if you think
that's your foundation,
but if you think you're better, you're a pretty good athlete, but you know we keep doing the same stuff over and over and over again, which helps everybody if you would understand it. Then down the road, when you're at a higher level and you're going against high level guys, your fundamentals will overmatch that person that might be a better athlete generally. But so it works for if they buy into it, which I have to kind of reiterate all the time.
The arrogance of youth, right? Like that's what you're combating.
And I'll tell these guys, you can pick out the guys that get it, even the gals. Well, the gals, I never have ego problems with gals.
Isn't that weird?
They're the easiest ones to coach.
And they're like my favorite people to work with in the gym because I feel like I'm not getting any bullshit.
And I say it all the time to the whole class. Our females are the most technical members we have. And it's because they come in there with a different mentality, different approach. Ego-free, relaxed, so generally, some of our best students are females, technically.
Do you remember, she doesn't live in the area anymore, but she trained at, it was the Martial Arts Academy way back when, Wendy Brown.
Oh, yeah.
So I used to train with her, and that girl could kick a hole through a Mack truck.
She's really good. I think back then, she was one of the few that had a youth black belt.
She was a savage. I trained with her when she was probably, I want to say like 14 or 15.
Yeah, that was back in the late 90s, I think. It was mid to late 90s. She was at the State College of Martial Arts.
And she was really, really good. Yeah. And I'd never worked with a woman or girl in martial arts capacity before. And I had a very short window of time where I was like, oh, well, I don't want to hurt her because you hold the pads for her once. I was like, I don't want her to hurt me.
Yes,
like, this is a problem.
Yeah, I think Ronda Rousey kind of opened the world's eyes to it's just not a dude sport.
Oh, no, absolutely not.
There's some tough females out there.
But there's something about just like, I mean, maybe it's just the amount of bullshit they have to deal with already. Their threshold for what it takes to get them angry is already so low. Yes. So they can kind of approach things from a learner perspective. Their demeanor and
their egos aren't as big as men.
Which is, to me, is awesome. And like, I don't, now, like.
That's how we were born.
But I feel like I got lucky to be able to get knocked around by some women early on to be like,
and then
okay,
she turned out to be a Los Angeles Raiderette.
Yeah, she went to Georgia Tech and she started there, and then she went to the Atlanta Falcons, and then she went over to the LA Raiders. Yeah,
I'm not sure. I still have her on Facebook.
She just had a project. She became like a bioscientist of some sort, of bioengineer.
She's really smart.
Yeah, she sent something into space like not that long ago, and she got to go to Cape Canaveral and watch her like project launch into space. I was like, that is wild.
And that goes with. Again, that's where the martial arts are more than just this physical empowerment. If you train with it consistently and long enough, or whatever, even if it's only a few months, but it's the social aspect. The people you meet become lifelong friends, or you think about them down the road. Hey, he or she really helped me, in class, or they're really patient with me, or whatever it is. So it's the martial arts. I tell everybody when they come in. Because most people, when they first come in that free class, are nervous as shit. And then sometimes most people will have to come in with a friend.
Yeah. The buddy system for sure.
Yeah. But they come in and I tell them right away, I was like, oh, you must be nervous as heck, right? And they're like, yeah. I was like, all right. Everybody is.
Yeah.
So we're cool. It's going to be safe. It's going to be fun. And then when we're done with the class, they're like, oh, wow, that's not so bad after all.
Yeah. But you do get immediate benefit out of it, right? Because you've done some things in class one where you're like, okay, all right, I can see where I have room to improve. Clearly I'm not good, but I did like doing this.
I'm going to be okay. And again, when they come in, they're in a safe environment.
Yeah.
That's number one, is to make sure they come in and feel comfortable. Because if we come in there, and you're sparring the first day, then people are going, what?
You definitely want to be the new guy walking in and finding out you're sparring, right?
Well, there's some boys, that's what they want to do. Like, one of the first questions they'll ask me, so when do we spar? I was like, when you get good enough. And first of all,
when I think you're not a threat for being terrible, because you are right now. No offense.
That's probably the least of it. And I explain the big thing is I want to get to know you. I want to make sure you're a cool person and your ego's in check before you get punched in the face. Because in this sport, everybody gets punched in the face. Mike Tyson gets punched in the face thousands of times.
It's literally the best part about the sport is that that even if I don't punch this guy in the face, he's going to run into somebody that will. Yeah.
So, there's some guys that are really skilled. They could probably spar after 2 or 3 months potentially, but we got to make sure that their ego's in check. So when they get punched a lot, they don't get pissed and then get out of control and then they get angry, and then we have no time for that.
I think the only times I ever got pissed when I got punched was when it was like you get one of those right square in the middle of the nose and your eyes are on, and you're like, the first couple of times it angers you, and then after a while you're like, damn it again. Like,
I mean, it will anger anybody. It's natural, but you got to kind of control that anger and turn into like, okay, I just got to learn. I just can't get out of control because, nobody likes to get punched in the face.
It turns out not a very popular sport.
I get plenty of guys who be like, oh, I don't mind getting hit. I was like, oh, really? And it's like, I hear that a lot.
I can take a hit.
Yeah.
That's the other one.
I've got hit a ton. I don't mind getting hit. No, you got hit in an environment where it's probably a really fast street fight and you're just swinging like maniacs and it's over.
Yeah, there's nothing behind it.
This is different. This is, it's a controlled kind of setting, a sport. And so there's more thinking that goes involved with it.
Well, hell, even that's different. Like, I mean, there was a period in time where if you did martial arts, you felt safe out in the streets. And now it's like, this 5'3" guy over here, I don't know, but he looks like a grappler. And I don't want to.
Well, I think before the UFC, stature, size, all that went a long way. And then, since the UFC and the popularity of it in the early 2000s, obviously wrestlers have been around forever.
Right.
So everybody knows a wrestler can take your ass down pretty quick if you have no background or experience.
Right.
But now with submission grappling, some tiny guys, if you take them to the ground, they'll choke you out potentially.
Right.
Yeah. So you just
you're like,
never know.
Oh, I was just talking shit and now I'm on the ground and I spilled my drink.
Yeah, you never know. And I tell people when they come in, it's like we will, they're walking in with no experience at all. We're going to give you some knowledge. You're going to have some training to help protect yourself, but there's certainly no guarantees.
Right.
Because this stuff's hard. I mean, look at the best guys in the world. They train every day for 3-4 hours a day. They're the best in the world, and they get beat, even though it's against another good guy. But still, if you put in that kind of the correlation there, whether people on the street with no experience, you minimal experience, or just same way up here, just you never know.
Yeah, there's always going to be equilibrium to some degree, right?
You never know, and depending if you had a couple drinks or you're in jeans or whatever, just there's so many elements to it. So
then Chuck Norris came out with those jeans for martial artists.
Well, nobody can kick like Chuck Norris in tight jeans. Yeah, and definitely back in the 80s when tight jeans was a thing.
Right.
Yeah, now not so much, but so yeah, it's just it's fascinating to see all walks of life come in there, and they all come in for different reasons. But most of it is either fitness, self-protection, or just confidence.
Well, I'd like to say that seeing the excitement in your eyes when you get to talk about working with the collegiate level athletes that are coming in there that are gaining these extra skills, it does seem like it puts a little extra
that's
having your stuff, because that's got to be cool.
It is, because I've always wanted to be a coach. My dad was a coach, so that was always the path I wanted, one way or another, being a school teacher or whatever it's going to be. I wish I had just done an internship as a basketball coach or a baseball or football coach and just followed that path, because they make millions.
Right.
If you can hold the grind and meet the right people. But yeah, training these high level athletes, knowing that I can really get into specifics, attention to detail. Not that I don't with anybody else, but I know that there's a goal for them. Okay, not that there isn't anybody else, but millions of dollars.
Yeah, the stakes of the goal are a little different, certainly, right?
This is their career that we're trying to, the people that come in that are learning for self-defense or fitness or whatever, they're going out to be engineers.
Right.
So this isn't going to help them get an engineer job. Maybe it will. As we talked earlier, that confidence you get from martial arts, maybe it'll make them that next interview feel just, like they're confident, like they can take on anything. So I shouldn't say that directly, but physically, what we're doing with these football athletes is we are trying to improve them. So in their path, their career path, which is hopefully the NFL, this will help them gain that. We have a motto here with MMA FX, which is gain an edge.
So how did you come up with the name of MMA FX? I didn't even get into that.
It was just like Lombard MMA. It wasn't too hard.
Right.
I'll put my first name right before MMA. Let's go with that.
That's the MMA gym route, but MMA...
Well, MMA FX, same thing. I was sitting around trying to think of name. I even had a member of mine that we'd sit around and come up with names like, I don't know, speed names. Right.
Throw it out. No ideas are bad. Throw it at the wall. See what sticks.
Yeah, we were trying to look up fast animals, and we were going to put that next to football cross training kind of. And then Paul, my good friend Paul, that owned Titan, he's like, why don't you just call it MMA FX, MMA football cross training? I was like, because the X was what's.
I assume that's what it was. Yeah. So props to him for saying it, right?
Yeah, well, we had a coach of mine that I was certified under years ago, Eric Polson. He had a thing called STX, and it was ST with a lowercase x, kind of same as my logo. And we were like, hey, just do something like that, MMA FX. I mean, can't get any more upfront than that. So I'm like, yeah,
certainly easy to remember, right?
Yeah. So that's what it is, just mixed martial arts, football, cross training. And that's why sometimes when I go places, if they're not quite sure what I do, they're thinking, okay, we're gonna come in here and we're gonna grapple, we're gonna do this. So I was like, no, that's not. I'm here to. It drives me crazy sometimes where, not that there's not anything wrong with it, that football athletes will go do like boxing, and I see them hitting pads. You'll see YouTube videos, some of these NFL guys, and they're just wailing on pads.
Right. Okay, you can hit it hard.
Yeah, it's a conditioning workout. No, ask your coach if you want. Ask your coach, hey, teach me the basics and fundamentals and all the details of these techniques, because that will correlate to my sport. That's how they should learn it.
Well, that, and you figure a little bit. Bag hitting, it's a lot of strain on the wrist if you're doing it wrong.
Yeah, and it's just safety thing with that. So that's why. But I'll go someplace and I'll think, oh yeah, we're gonna wrestle and stuff. I was like, no, I mean, I've tried to do my best to take mixed martial arts or wrestling, boxing, Wing Chun techniques and how they'd be applicable to football.
Yeah, tailor them into your, an avenue that's actually going to functionally benefit your athletes.
Like a front kick in Thai boxing doesn't do shit for, unless it's a conditioning hip flexibility type thing. So no, all these elements of
I didn't even think of that, but that's actually that is probably the best translation of how it's going to help them.
It is. Well, when I do Thai boxing with players, I've done it with some offensive linemen in the past. It was mostly we did it for conditioning and flexibility.
Yeah.
But still, I taught them the technique, how it should be done. We were pretty thorough with that because I didn't want to injure them, especially, if they're coming down and training with me.
I don't want Coach Franklin knocking on my door.
Yeah. I didn't want anybody because I was like, shit, because I didn't want to be a part of that while you're injuring my players.
Right.
That's not going to be good for business. So,
yeah, turns out.
So, mostly the tie bot, the kicking was just for flexibility purposes. It is eye-foot coordination and the conditioning element, but it's mostly hands, mostly boxing. And then, like I said, the Wing Chun, and it's really about, we're trying to tighten everything up, short range of motions, working a non-dominant hand, and it's important. I always tell guys that the less motion you have, the less margin of error. So the more motion you have, the more loose you are, the higher margin of error. You can see that in any sport.
Yeah.
So we really are attention to that detail, and precision, timing. We're working that, and I use an analogy a lot that, Floyd Mayweather. Everybody, even if you're a boxing fan or not, Floyd Mayweather. You know enough about him. And he's 46, 7 years old at one point. A few years back, beating up guys that are in their 20s that are faster than him, quicker, stronger, etc. But he would whoop them because
he could control
timing,
the fight,
precision, his awareness, his vision. What he would beat them to everything, and that's what we're doing with these guys. We're trying to. You're going to go up against big, strong guys, big, fast guys that might be stronger, faster, bigger than you all the time across the line. But if your timing and rhythm and precision is better, then that generally is going to outmatch that bigger, stronger athlete.
And your understanding of your body mechanics and the body mechanics of somebody you're facing. If you know that somebody's bigger than you, you realize that it doesn't matter how strong he is. His arm held out here is not. Right. Nobody has such great control that they can't be manipulated a little bit.
And that's where, and I'm not saying other coaches, again, it's hard. If you got 60 football players, it's hard to really get into the details of understanding your body and body mechanics. But martial arts will make you understand that.
Yeah.
To get the techniques right and be successful, you got to understand your body. And that's what we're doing. These guys come in and, whatever they've done on a football field since they were a kid, whatever so what I teach, I don't teach pass rush moves, but what we do helps their pass rush moves.
Right.
Because they're tighter, more explosive, quicker to the movement or the target.
More precise with it.
I'm just there to get their hands quicker, faster, better, build that confidence, and keep hands off of them. If the hands get on them, what are they going to do? So that's a part of the main focus of what the MMA FX is. I mean, MMA FX, the hand fighting part, that's one part. We have an O-line kind of thing that we do. We have a conditioning part, which the whole team can do. There's no other conditioning
that's better than mixed martial arts.
It is. And we talk about that all the time when I go to places. There's this element too that's team building.
When I'm gone, if they're doing this right, they can keep doing this, and that repetition's not hurting them.
Well, the thing that's the conditioning part is not that's easy, but like I said, you put gloves on guys and they can just have fun and wail on stuff. It's not technical always, but it still can be fun. It's mixed martial arts and get them away with all the football stuff. But the hand fighting is very articulate and attention to detail, and it really takes a lot of time. And so when I go to places to coach their coaches or work with their athletes, I worry when I leave there. It's like shit. They're really not going to have the. I'm only been there for 4 hours or 6 hours. It's typically when my clinics are, and so when I leave, I'm like, and I tell the coach all the time, I'm here. Let me work with you because I want this to work for your team and for MMA FX reputation. But it's hard. It's hard to get them to really understand this in a 6 hour period. So
it makes for good ability to do repeat sessions. Like, hey, I do clinics as often as you want to book me.
Well, I've always been told this since I've been going to clinics or whatever. If you can get 2 or 3 things out of a weekend clinic, clinics are about throwing out a whole buffet of techniques. And then it's up to those students. Like if you just went to a clinic and you did 3 techniques all damn weekend, people are gonna be like, "What the fuck?"
Right.
Even though that would probably be better for your progression.
Yeah, yes and no.
Over and over and over. Yeah.
But if you missed out on what that buffet of 7 more things could have been, you might have found 3 other things you were actually really good at out of the gate that you needed the improvement.
And some people maybe could take 10 things from a clinic, but most people
that is not most people.
3 people at best.
Right.
And hopefully they can nail it. So that's why I tell these guys that, if we can just really get 3 or 4 of these things, and I give them a baseline to try to work with, and and hopefully it works for them. But yeah, the guys that bring me back a few times, then the one-on-one trainings obviously is different. That's more hands-on, very articulate with me.
Individual understanding. Yeah.
Like with anything, like we talked earlier, like no matter what you're learning, one-on-one is the best. It just costs more.
So, I guess, how did you end up going through? I wanted to kind of shift a little bit to the pandemic. Like when that hit, obviously that's got to be, your bread and butter is people being able to be in a room together, not even just being in a room together, but like laying hands on each other and working on things.
That was pretty nerve wracking for any small business. Just speak for State College. I mean, we were all just like, what the heck? Because everything was going great. The economy was great. The gym was the best it ever was. And when that shit happened, and I was just like, oh my God, what am I going to do now? So we were shut down for 8 weeks, not knowing what the heck's going to go on. We reopened, and then that summer, was very quiet in town. So I think we were open in June. But where we benefited, thankfully, even though it's kind of odd. So Penn State having free campus, all the other gyms opening up, because LombardMMA is within Lionheart Fitness.
Yeah.
So it's like 3 businesses in one. So we all rely on each other to keep that business alive and surviving. Yeah. So we didn't know what was going to go on. But so we lucked out in a way that our nemesis kind of, it's not really our nemesis because most of our members are Penn State students. So we're thankful for Penn State. But also with free campus and everything, students are going to go there. All the freshmen are going to go there.
Right.
But when COVID hit, everything was shut down on campus. So all those freshmen that would normally go to IM building came down to Lionheart. Yeah. And they would join the fitness center. And then if they didn't know about LombardMMA, they were in the fitness center like, oh, there's a martial arts place here. So we actually did okay, if not better. That helped us a little bit. Granted, then we shut down in December. But so the pandemic sucked. But
universally for everyone.
Yes, it did. But we kind of benefited. More people were aware of us. Penn State was shut down, so we survived, thankfully. But we were nervous as heck. But yeah, we had to follow. We followed certain protocols for safety and whatever they were telling us to do. And even though now we look back and they were just full of shit idiots, they didn't know what the hell they were telling us. We'd have been fine.
Turns out we were all just learning.
Yeah, we were all just being naive and whatever. But that's a whole nother thing we can talk about.
Next podcast.
Small business owner. Yeah. So, and then the football thing that shut down for 2 years.
I feel like that's why
I couldn't go anywhere.
Oh yeah. You couldn't
be
do
on
anything.
Campuses. All team. They're all Zoom, and even because I was going to go to the New York Giants because Sean had gone there that year of COVID. Yeah. That's when he left, 2020. So he wanted to bring me in right away, but all team activities were Zoom.
Yeah.
So it was 2 years, second year after he was there, that he finally could bring me in. But even then, I had to get the thing up the nose each time I walked in.
Yeah, the swab every time you're going in.
I had, because I wasn't going to get vaccinated, but they told me, it's like, hey, do you want to come work with us? I was like, yeah. It's like, well, you vaccinated? I was like, no. He's like, are you going to get vaccinated? No. Well, then you can't come on to the facility.
Right.
I was like, all right, so where do I got to go to get this vaccine?
Yeah.
And then I got.
Can you do that here now?
Right, kind of right now. Whatever.
Can you do it?
Put that stuff in me. I'll go for it. So, but yeah, so that certainly hurt the MMA FX brand for a couple years. Because even when that code hit, I was going to the Bengals. I was going to where else was I going? There's like 2 or 3 other places. Illinois, a couple other places, and then it was all shut down.
That's the worst.
So I was like, oh my God, I'm gonna have to be a school counselor now.
I feel like obviously the COVID year, all the WPSU part-time employees, which is what I elected to stay. I didn't want to go full-time because you have to be a union if you work for Penn State, which is really weird. They're like one of the only Big Ten schools that has a union for their media department. Oh. And it's actually, I think it hurts them more than it helps them. But one of the things that I felt like kind of hurt us that COVID year that we had like basically our record losses in a season was that we were adhering so strictly to the protocols and and you could see it in all the footage. And literally, I mean, I remember there was footage of Pat Fryermuth at practice and they had these little gaiters over their their mouths and noses. And, but they're out in the summer and it's hot and they'd be like, they pull it off just to catch a breath. And the coach would be, hey, put that back up, put that back on, as often as they could, right? But also to some degree, they were in their own little bubble when it came to training. Yeah. But I think that really kind of hurt us when it went into that football season, because there were other schools that were skirting that real
especially
bad.
Down south.
Yeah, for sure. It's the Wild West for all intents and purposes.
Big Ten was the only ones that were really, really hardcore about that, and nobody knew what was going on, so I get it. You know,
that's the thing.
We're like, oh, what the hell are we doing? But yeah, like even Gators. I mean, I was selling Gators at my gym, Lombard MMA Gators, but I think they banned them, or didn't ban them. They just eventually they didn't let
Gators weren't an option,
because they didn't do what they were supposed to do, or I don't know. They're the
Turns out if everybody wasn't actually wearing like NFL branded N95 masks, it wasn't really doing anything to help anybody.
Yeah, they really want us wearing these
paper cloths,
helmets and masks, and whatever else. 3 of them at a time, and jeez.
I mean, it's one thing if you're doing like a high intensity interval training and you've got like an oxygen restrictor and you're trying to just like train yourself.
That was messed up because you'd have, so you're expecting me to have all my boxing students who are working out hard to wear these masks,
right?
So, and they're just spitting in their own and sucking in their own sweat and stuff, and we were just advocates of health.
That's what it should have been.
People died, and just whenever I'd say no, don't start telling me that I didn't care about other people's lives. I'm just saying, as we start to learn stuff, being healthy was the number one defeat this.
That was like the biggest modifier was whether you were healthy or not.
So, and wearing a mask, suffocating yourself during a workout is not the most healthy thing. I would think. I'm no expert, but we followed all the stuff we had to follow.
Well, I was glad because there are some businesses that are now no longer with us in the State College area that did not survive. Going through it.
Bad. There's a lot of martial arts gyms that didn't survive. Philly, Philly was the worst in Pennsylvania. They didn't open up until I don't even know when.
Right.
So we were lucky in a way that we're kind of in a rural area maybe and not in the city where they were shut down forever.
Yeah.
And a lot of martial arts gyms didn't survive. A lot of gyms didn't.
Yeah.
And it just was unfortunate. Then at that point, a lot of people were just doing their own home gyms.
Yeah, that was a big thing. And if they weren't doing that or baking bread, it was definitely
so
setting up the home
people were either getting way fat or fatter or best shape of their life.
Yeah. I put on the COVID 20 for sure, definitely.
And then there's other people like, oh man, this is my time. I'm going to crush. I'm working at home, or I'm not working at all. I'm getting government money, whatever it is. I'm just going to kill it.
I can say pretty confidently that I was advantaged in that it turns out when everybody couldn't go anywhere, what they needed was video of things to be able to showcase and do things. And, if you're not union and you're not working, SAG-AFTRA or any of the organizations that require certain protocols to be in place, it was the Wild West for me. I was showing up and shooting in a mask and everybody else around me was masked, but they would want video where people weren't wearing masks. And I was like, just so you know, you're just going to have to shoot this with masks now and then without masks later, because this is going to be something we're going to look back at in history and be like, oh, there's people wearing masks. I lived in Japan for a little while. So it was very common that people were sick in the subways. If they weren't feeling well, or even if they were worried they might get sick, to be seeing masks out in public and medical, surgical, medical grade masks. And so for me, it wasn't really a big deal. But what I did notice was that, a lot of people wanted to skirt the imagery. They're like, oh, we don't want to make people think about the pandemic. I was like, who's avoiding that subject right now? Who are you trying to fool into thinking that there's a world where this is not happening?
Right. Yeah, it's going on everywhere.
Turns out any channel you go to right now has something about it now.
No, it was.
So I did do a little bit of thriving and growing in that period of time, which was nice.
People could made their choices what to do, man. It's just some people benefited from it.
I think
the whole thing sucked. Some people benefited.
I think everybody got at least the initial benefit of that 2-week lockdown, where it kind of just forced everybody to just stop for a second. Mm-hmm. And for me, I'm an ADHD neurodivergent type person, and I'm a freelance artist. So for me, I was already working with a lot of uncertainty in my world anyway. And you can attest, right? When you're building the gym and the membership is down, or you don't have enough outreach to get more people to come in, or whatever it is. There's so many different situations that make, being a small business owner or an independent business owner difficult to operate. And so for me, it was I was now seeing everybody else brought to my level because nobody else knew when the next paycheck was coming or where money was going to be coming from for them. And, you know, there was a period of time we were wiping down our packages from Amazon and helping them shell out an extra several $1 billion. And, you know, so I feel like in so far as I got to kind of see a lot of people around me that I know are just inherently workaholics, have no choice but to like, I guess I'll just take a walk outside or something. And so I think there was something good about the collective slowdown of everybody to kind of take stock. I think a lot of people started to figure out what was and wasn't as important to them as they realized. And then on the aftermath of, you know, coming out of the pandemic and we're, you know, it's officially over or not or whatever, what I think it's officially over. I think it's been declared. But like in the period of time where everybody kind of felt like it was over, regardless of what the news was saying, you know, it did seem like everybody came out of it with like a renewed appreciation for what they were going to be doing moving forward with all this freedom they got back.
I mean, that was tough. Like, you know, you know, where it's like we're living in fucking communist fucking Russia or something. Like the government's telling us you can only do this, can't do that, can't do that. I was like, what the hell, man? And but we're Americans and it sucked. We all bitched about it, but we did what we had to do. Right. And we all got through it together, if you want to say, but yeah, and when I say people benefit from it, you know, certain people, businesses, maybe people established,
Jeff Bezos.
Yeah, right. Young people that, you know, people I think are still suffering from it that don't have maybe, you know, had a great job or whatever. They're still suffering from it.
Yeah.
But certainly youth, I mean, who knows what the effects of that was, just sitting at home.
But I'll say, if they had taken, you know, a few Lombard MMA classes or an MMA FX class, they would have been well adapted to be able to pivot in that situation. Right. Yeah, it's hard whenever, you know, especially in small towns in small rural America, right? Like if the factory shuts down, it's like, that's all of our jobs. Like, what are we doing here? Yep. Well, I can't drive now.
Access to a computer, internet, or whatever it might be. But, you know, who benefits some, you know, not at the time, but in, you know, as we move forward, some of these guys that are playing college ball at 24 years old and thriving.
Yeah.
So the guys that got fucked the most were the guys that were graduating 2020 and they couldn't go to a camp and they lost maybe their one chance to get in the NFL because I trained a couple of those guys and it was horrible.
Well, our basketball program was finally going to tap into a lot of the playoffs for the for men's basketball.
Okay. Yeah.
And they were like right when they were getting ready to go to their tournaments in March, it was whenever they were like, oh, we're actually canceling the tournament. And so now all these players that were basically trying to get drafted in the NBA were in a position where it was like, okay, well, now I'm not going to get to have this accolade to kind of showcase stuff. And some of them were seniors. So it did make me feel really bad for them.
Yep. But the freshmen and sophomores that were part of that COVID year, they now got at least one extra year playing ball if they want.
Yeah.
And now they're 24 playing against an 18, 19-year-old.
Right.
So,
right.
So they got an extra chance at maybe making their dream come true, making it to the NFL, NBA, wherever they want to go. So, yeah, I think those people benefiting is, you know, short and limited, but, you know, most of us struggled.
It's funny to see how all of the different athletic programs at Penn State and sports are starting to sort of like equalize, get back to equilibrium and balance out, and we're starting to see like what is real and what is actually kind of like a little inflated because this person has this extra year, and that's going to affect us for like probably another 2 or 3 years.
Is that when will it be? I'm confused. I don't even remember what code it was. It seems like it was
started 2020, year. March 2020.
So if you're a freshman in 20, in 2020, then,
you're a junior this year probably.
So probably for the next year, they still get that COVID year.
Yeah.
One more year, maybe.
I think it's that, but it's the ones that got into the program in that first year that they'll have their extra COVID year and then
plus a redshirt year.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like another 3 years that we're going to be kind of watching this kind of balance out.
Clifford, wasn't he 26 or something? How old is he?
Sean?
Yeah.
I think he was 26, I think.
Yeah. So what he got the COVID year. What else did he get? A redshirt year. And then, how the hell did...
We had him for 5.
More than that, wasn't it? Did he play 6 years?
Was it 6 years? I'm trying to think. Well, we had Trace until the end of the 2018-2019 season.
And Clifford was probably what then? Freshman?
Or I would say he was probably redshirting. Well, I think at that point it was complicated because it was between him and Will Levis as a QB. So that was a really interesting period. And so in the fall, I do these football pregame shows. And so I'm dealing a lot with like, I got more of like a granular look at the Penn State football program and go to the media days. And so I remember doing media days before the pandemic, and then the media days where we had during the pandemic, and everyone, the athletes are wearing masks. We have to wear masks. We had to maintain like 10 feet between us, and we're literally like shouting at the players, trying to get their interview out of them. It was so awkward. But I mean, we made it through, and now we're back on the other side of it. So I'm just kind of thankful that we're starting to get back to some semblance of what normal is going to look like moving forward.
I think we are. So
just in time for World War III. Whew.
Yeah, that's right. I know. That's what's next. What's worse? Pick your poison. Jeez, it's ridiculous.
But in the interim, I wanted to, thank you and say, I really appreciate you coming in. I think that you were kind of the shining example of this process of cross collaboration through, your business and your upbringing, because you start in one place and then you end up being able to get to a place where you're kind of able to posturize and position yourself to do MMA FX. And then, I mean, like I said, I think that as that kind of progresses and UFC is not really dying down in popularity, they're going to start to see more of the athletes are going to start talking about, oh, well, actually, one of the things I thought really helped me was, and then if it's not your name specifically, it'll be that I took some of these like handworking shops with, mixed martial arts schools here or there, this instructor. I think it's going to be one of those things that you're not going to train that way as a football player because you have too many other things to drill. Yes. That's more of like a specialized kind of like a identity, body mechanics, movement class that you're, like you in your case, you can call them workshops. What do we call them?
No, just clinics.
Clinics. Yeah. And so like, being able to kind of do those micro adjustments through clinics is going to be one of those things. I mean, I see that as a very scalable business. We should, after we're done filming, we should sit down and talk about how we should maybe come up with some visual curriculum type tools to kind of not even necessarily, you wouldn't want to sell them because you'd want to be there to be teaching it, but to be able to get these, live testimonials whenever you have an athlete or somebody you've worked with that's coming back into town.
Again, before I really couldn't, I was too timid to get that. Because the NCAA had a stranglehold and everything. Because most of these guys, and then the NFL guys, it's weird sometimes. You train. We just talked about it earlier, like before we start this, but to train somebody and then be like, oh, okay, hey, do you mind giving me a testimonial? I just that's why people have already told me get a agent, get a social media person, to deal with all that. I don't want to. I just want to train the guys, have a good buddy guy relationship with each other, and not be like, okay, can I shoot a video of us now?
It's hard whenever you're trying to do both things at once
for me. So I just, that's hard for me.
The good thing is these athletes that you're going to be working with 9 times out of 10 are going to be of the type of caliber, especially if they're the people that Franklin's recruiting in here, if you're working with football players from here, where they are appreciative of all of the little steps that get them a little bit further along the way in their journey and in their path. And so, insofar as they take home something that's really valuable from you, that is going to really kind of transform their career moving forward by, like we said, just those little micro adjustments. I think that they're the kind of people, at least all the athletes that I've met, and I bet basically all of them this past year, they were really, really, they're the kind of people that are going to be like, yeah, I'm more than happy to do that because I think more people that are doing this need to figure this out. Because as much as it benefits them to have the edge on the other player on the other team by having better control and better awareness, it's also good that if you're going against somebody who has better awareness, you're a little less likely to get hurt. Maybe if that shoot for getting that forced fumble is going to be something that doesn't dislocate your shoulder. I always
wonder about that. I've talked to guys before about that they're working with me, they're putting the time in, they're doing this extra stuff, they're investing in themselves or whatever. Do they want to tell their teammate who's also trying to get to the next level? So I asked them these guys, and some of them don't. They're just like, I don't give a shit. And they do.
I mean,
they're all competitors, and they all have. There's a dollar sign.
Yeah, that's true. And you figure how many spots open up on the NFL every year for you to be able to be drafted.
I'm going to take a guy from 2 sacks to 20, but it's just little parts that nobody else is doing. Like we always say, do the little things, do the things that other people aren't doing. And so do you want to keep it that way, or do you want to tell your buddies, hey, you should do one-on-ones with this guy because it's really helping me?
Yeah. Not if I'm drilling against them in camp. It comes
draft day, and they're like, oh, wow, those 2 guys I told, they're getting drafted before me, and I'm not even getting drafted. So I don't know.
Well, luckily enough, there's just such a volume of them going through that there will be cross-pollination one way or the other.
And there's some guys that start it, and then they fade out. I got a couple guys now that they're just really committed. And it's almost like they develop a passion for my sport.
Yeah.
And so it's like when they're done with their football career, they want it, which is possible.
Yeah,
but
certainly.
But
there's room for crossover.
Those high level athletes, they didn't get. Some people got there just because they're gift from God.
Right.
You know, they're just freak athletes and they can do whatever. They don't even have to listen to their coach. They don't have to try. They don't show up to practice. They just fucking got it. But most of us aren't like that. So most of these guys are at a D1 level, especially, and then succeeding at D1 level. They got work ethic. They've had to bust their butt, put the time in, and so you know, I can tell what kind of person these we talk about before. It's just much easier to train people that really want to be there and get it, and the guys there. That's why when I used to do it pro bono for free, sometimes it'd be like, you just doing it because it's free. And you know,
like, I'm working through some shit too.
Yeah.
Like, I'm trying to work.
These guys doing it now are paying for it, and so that means they're committed.
And they're also getting a more cultivated class, right? So like you kind of honed in on some real. You look at the pros and cons pretty early when you're kind of formulating something like that, because it's something that until that has. Anybody could write whatever the curriculum is going to be, but your curriculum is going to be the one that you sign off on through your years of experience. And so for you to be able to sit down and be like, okay, I feel like I've got this where it is, and it will, by nature of existing and me continuing to do this, grow and evolve a little bit over the years, but the foundation of it is here, and everything else is going to kind of like just sort of branch out a little bit from there or expand from there.
Well, and these guys at a high level, especially NFL athletes that I work with, and every coach that works in the NFL, that's the big difference between college and the NFL, as from what I've coaches that have talked to me about this, that college level, you're mentoring, you're like their uncle, basically. At a pro level, they don't give a shit about you. Just get me better so I can make the team and make a living. Yeah. So if you can't prove to me why I got to do this drill or technique, then I don't want to listen to you. I mean, it's the same way when these guys come to me, I try to do the best I can. I do the best. I do it, and hopefully it translates. That I explain every little thing. This is why we're doing this, and this is why this will help you in your craft on the football field.
And it helps to have that sort of understanding when you start it. You're like, I know, okay, I see where this applies. And they can also kind of be preemptively thinking about like, okay, I don't get it yet, but I do see that if I can get this, where that's going to take me.
And you have to convince them that this is what's going to help you get better, and I'm committed to showing you and working with you. And then you had a good relationship, and then sky's the limit from there.
But luckily, these athletes are also of that mindset where, like, if they've got the discipline from the years that they've spent in their training curriculums and regimens that they've gone through from their different coaches, they also have this discipline for understanding that even if I don't fully get – some of them have that discipline where they're like, okay, I understand that I don't love or I really fully understand this yet, but they're able to kind of be self-aware and socially aware enough to be like – but there's clearly rhyme or reason to this because I've heard people that have said that they do this, that they get this. So I just don't see it yet, but I know I got to stay the course. And sometimes that's a part of it, right? Like you don't have to see yourself getting better at it to realize that you are, because part of the process of getting better is that period of sucking.
And it's not going to happen in 2 weeks or 3 sessions. You weren't a good D end in 3 weeks.
Right.
So, they got to understand that. And I make it clear to all of them, I am not a football coach. I understand football. My dad coached football. I grasp it. I think that's why this helps this program.
Right.
I'm not just a martial arts guy, a taekwondo guy, or any guy, but doesn't know shit about football, but is like, oh yeah,
I can plug some body mechanic moves.
But I make him aware of that. I'm not a football coach, but I'm a combat sport coach, and I understand body movements and mechanics, and I understand what works or what is similar in our sports to your sports, and that's what we're going to hound down and focus on. I'm going to make you a better athlete. And then you take the athleticism you gain from martial arts training, specific martial arts training that correlates to football, and we're going to wrap it out, do it over and over again, and then you take it to the football field and make the football motions work for you.
Right, exactly.
So I'm not teaching D-line guys rips and swims and long arms and get-offs or anything like that. I'm developing their athletic ability to an either higher level so that D-line coach, when he asks them to do something physically or whatever, they'll pull it off with this extra cross training.
And think about the back end of that. You get to one of these NFL training camps, you've gotten drafted, right? You've made it all this way through, and you do something and you can impress your coaches. Mm-hmm. They see the value in that. That's the thing that gets you the more field time, which is lends to the bigger paycheck, lends to a lot of other things. But there's also this other aspect where, like, not only does it, they all have every athlete that I've talked to, at least of the Penn State football athletes that I've talked to, it's all about getting in your reps. And they're like, wherever I got to get them in to be better, that's what I'm going to do. And if their mentality isn't necessarily whether they do or don't get it or do or don't like it, but they're like, I got to go through this is the lumber mill I'm crawling through. I'm about to get debarked a little bit. Let's go through here and get this done. Cause this is the next step. And
it's a commitment because as you mentioned that there's guys that have reached out to me, they want to train and then so they get all excited, but then once they want to try to commit to it, they realize, okay, I got practice here, I got team meeting here, I got tutoring here, I got a class schedule here, and I just can't do it. Yeah, it's just so not everybody's going to have the bandwidth for it. No, and then so the couple guys that have trained me over years, I mean, they just jam it in. They they're freaks of nature with their work ethics. They're like, that's what they do. They'll literally wedge it in there. Like I put an hour in this week. I put an hour in this day and this day. Yeah. I'm going to have to move some things around, but well, those are the people that are willing to invest in themselves. And honestly, I mean, in any capacity, it doesn't matter what you're trying to do. If you're not willing to invest in yourself and avoid spending in ways, whatever that's, emotionally, socially, financially, in the ways that aren't necessarily going to be constructive for you, you're gonna hit a period of lapse that you don't want. So you need to buckle up early. And they say as business owners, when business owners say, I just don't got time for that. I didn't have time for that. Oh shit, I forgot about it. It's like, okay, well then just make time. I had somebody tell me that I stay up. If you have to stay up 20 hours a day, then stay up 20 hours a day. So don't whine to me if your business fails. Now, as I say that next week, some shit's gonna happen. Fucking LombardMMA is going instinct karma. Yeah. No. So I didn't really mean that. I take that back. That's what I heard on Shark Tank. Yeah. So I'm just saying what they say. Well, I mean, the thing that really kind of rocked me not that long ago, I was kind of I wasn't eating very well, and I wasn't necessarily doing the workouts I get that are weightlifting tend to come from like lifting isometrically 20-pound pieces of camera equipment out here, and a lot of like maneuvering in that regard, a lot of hiking. But I kind of, they were like, why don't you work out anymore? Like you said, you like it and like it makes you feel better. And I was like, yeah, dude, I do miss being in a regimented martial arts class of some capacity, because it's nice to go in and drill and you do feel better when you're done. Like it does maybe suck getting yourself like, okay, I got all these things to do. I gotta shut this off to go here to do this thing. But I was just making excuses, and I had a friend who was like, look, man, you got the same number of hours a day I do. Yeah. Like you just got to make time for it. And that's kind of the accountability set. Yep. I mean, there's numerous times I'm sitting on the couch eating chips, watching something stupid on TV going, man, I'm way out of shape. God, this sucks. And I'm like, look in the mirror. Right. And you own a gym, Bruce. Like, you have no excuse. It ain't hard. If you're not, you're in a gym 10 hours a day. You can go in at midnight. You got the key. But so necessity is the mother of invention there. Like when you have no choice but to make the change that you want to change, that's when you're probably going to do it. But ideally you have the discipline to do. I mean, it's hard when you got discipline in so many different angles to want to exercise it in every angle. Right. And so that's where you kind of see these people that are like, this dude's like a D1 athlete. Like, why is he sitting on the couch eating like what is happening right now? You're like, dude, this is me time right now. I need this. Yeah. And it's like they say, every psychologist or counselor needs one themselves. Yeah. It's just like every coach, they need a coach themselves too. So I can coach all day long and tell them what they should be doing, do as I say, not as I do or whatever. But if I had a coach, then I would, if I commit myself, I want a trainer, somebody that's going to make me get to the gym or make me do this or make me overcome things or make me have the discipline or accountability. So yeah, I mean, as a coach, I sit there and tell people, get to class, get to work in. Tell my fighters, and I'm over there just, not lifting weights or not working out so yeah, it's easy. Again, that whole complacency thing and it's just sometimes it's hard. Yeah, being in the gym all day. Well, why don't you work out? You're in the gym. I don't know, because I'm in the gym all day. I've been in the damn thing for 12 hours. I just want to go home. Yeah. So I sit in my recliner. So, it's like, because unless I make a half an hour at the beginning of my day and a half an hour at the end of my day, and if you've got, your classes, like we bumped this podcast a little later because you had some new introductory students come in. It's one of those things where you're like, your schedule will shift when stuff like that happens. And then also like it's not like you could be like, all right, class is over, everybody have a good night. Now I'm going to run over here and walk on this treadmill, because like you're going to have kids that are going to come up want to talk to you and say shit. So it's like, that is a gym that you run and work out of, but like at the same time, you don't have, it's not like the gym that you had other than I guess going in after hours, way late after hours to do it. And at that point, that's usually the drinking hour. So I don't know. I know. Yeah, that's when it's bourbon time. So yeah, I know. Yeah, we all there's not one human on earth that doesn't have an excuse for everything, but some choose to overcome those excuses. Some choose to just ride them out. So.
Well, Bruce, we're coming up on the 11 o'clock hour, which is our drinking hour,
yes,
as we so aptly said.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for coming on the podcast, man, sharing some of your history and telling me all this stuff. And I'm really excited to see what's going to go on in the future. And I'm positive we're going to do some work together here in the future. I'm already in there doing stuff with my little brother because he wants to go get some certifications and he wants to do some bodybuilding. So I was like,
no, Josh, you got a great brother. Really cool.
He's a gift and a curse, right?
Yeah, he is, man. Yeah, I see him on a daily basis. You never know what you're gonna get from him, but as we get going, you always get a smile. And
he's got a good heart. It's hard not to have a good time when he's around. Yeah,
no, he's an asset to our gym, just as a member.
Yeah, he loves it, man. Like it's so weird to me because I grew up with him, right? So like my understanding of him is this annoying pain in my ass little kid that I'm pretty sure I like caused him permanent brain damage with the amount of times that he and I got into fights and like would slug at each other. Yeah. But for all of his ups and downs, man, like he's just got a really big heart and he wants to see other people succeed. And I'm really glad that in his life, he was kind of, for whatever reason, he was made to feel like maybe he wasn't very academically inclined. My mom had him tested whenever we were younger. He's smart as hell. Yeah. He just doesn't like to focus on schoolwork. And I was like, you know what? To be fair, the United States public education system is not necessarily designed to make people free thinkers and think outside of the box and go after the things that they want to do. So the fact that he found something he loves this much.
And some of the most successful guys or people in the world didn't finish high school.
Right.
So, whatever. I mean, just because a piece of paper says you graduated this or graduated that, it's just like, don't
you have a piece of paper somewhere that's just sitting in a frame that we're not using?
Yeah. It's like, I don't have a piece of paper that says I'm a PhD in coaching or martial arts or anything, but
turns out
I've been doing it 30 years.
I've made the legacy career part of my life be that thing that counts as the skill level that I've met.
Anybody can be a PhD, it can be a PhD in cooking or whatever. Just puts time into it, experience, work ethic. I mean, but that piece of paper is just, I got a piece of paper that says I have a master's. Okay. I'm not doing shit with it. So I put the time in for that, but it really doesn't.
But something great was born out of it.
Right.
And there's going to be a lot of, D1 Penn State college athletes that are going to benefit from it in the upcoming months and years. And I'm looking forward to seeing it grow, man.
Hopefully. Great.
So just tell people where they can find your sites and where they can kind of sign up to take classes. And I think that at this point, if they've gotten this far, they've got a good scope of like the type of coach and instructor you are. So where can they find you on socials and online?
As far as Lombard MMA, we're located right downtown State College, block off campus. Website is www.LombardMMA.com. And free class. Everybody can try a free class first. Come down. It's a safe, friendly environment. Attention to detail. If you come to class, we'll get you good, no matter what your past experience is athletically. But remember, it's more than just physical development. It's mental, emotional, social development. It's like a family atmosphere down there. Everybody knows everybody's name. And like I said, if you're looking to get married anytime soon, you can meet that person right there at the gym. It's happened already.
I've got proof.
Yes. Geez. But lifelong friends when you meet and lifelong confidence you can develop through the martial arts. And the MMA FX is MMAFX.net is the website, and doing clinics all the time, one-on-one trainings. The one-on-one training is also with the martial arts as well. That's a big part of our business. So that is, team clinics, coach clinics, and one-on-one trainings. And the other one we didn't really talk about, I said that phys ed curriculum. So any phys ed teachers out there, it's called Martial Arts Fitness, and that's martialartsfitness.net. And that just is so instead of just having your standard traditional volleyball, basketball, dodgeball, they still have dodgeball. They still love to play dodgeball.
That was like one of my favorite.
I don't know. Got a little, too much for people, but so this is martial arts fitness, where it's especially nice if people live in areas where you don't have martial arts gyms. They can learn martial arts in a fitness kind of dynamic. But what we found with that is it's not necessarily all the athletes it's the people that maybe don't play a sport that they can find something else through martial arts. So that's a pretty cool curriculum that we offer to phys ed teachers. But yeah, Lombard MMA is right down brick and mortar, right downtown State College. And then the MMA FX, we travel all over the country to work with guys. So all different levels.
Well, thank you so much for coming on, brother. I appreciate it. This has been great.
Yeah, that was fun.
I'll talk to you. We'll get you back in here again in a couple episodes.
Sounds good.
We're always collaborating at all times with the universe.
That is a wrap on another episode of the Collab or Die podcast. I hope you enjoyed listening to it as much as I enjoyed making this episode for you. And now it's time for our favorite part of the show, the part where I beg you to please hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on those notifications so you never miss an episode. And don't be shy. Give us a shout out on social media at Collab or Die Podcast on all the cool platforms to share your thoughts, your feedback, and your love. Until next time, Collab or Die, baby.